You've been searching for peace in all the wrong places. You've been told it comes from success, from money, from approval, from having everything figured out. But if that were true, why do so many people who have it all still feel lost? Why do you still feel restless, drained, stuck in the same thoughts that keep repeating like a broken record? You've been carrying the weight of expectations, of fears, of regrets, thinking one day it will all finally disappear. But here's the truth. The weight doesn't vanish on its own. You learn to carry it differently. And that's exactly what the Stoics mastered. They discovered that real freedom doesn't come from controlling the world outside, but from mastering the world inside. For thousands of years, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus left behind the blueprint. A blueprint for calm in chaos, for strength in suffering, for joy that no circumstance can take away. And tonight, you are going to step into that same path. These 3 hours are not just something to listen to. They are a reset button for your mind. With every lesson, you'll feel the noise fade, the pressure lift, the clarity return. By the time you finish, you'll see life differently, stronger, calmer, more in control. So write this down now. Nothing outside me controls me. The more you repeat it, the more it will engrave itself into your mind, until it becomes part of who you are. Are you ready? Let's begin. You've been living with comfort at your fingertips. Warm beds, food delivered in minutes, endless distractions glowing from a screen. Comfort has made life easier, but it has also made you weaker in ways you don't always notice. The smallest inconveniences can feel like disasters. A late bus, a missed call, a cold room, and suddenly your peace is gone. What if the very comfort you cling to is the reason life feels heavier than it should? What if strength doesn't come from avoiding discomfort, but from choosing it? The Stoics believed that the mind becomes strong the same way the body does, through training. They didn't wait for hardship to find them. They practiced it deliberately. By stepping willingly into small forms of discomfort, they built resilience that made real struggles easier to face. Tonight, as you hear this, you will begin to see that voluntary discomfort is not punishment. It is freedom. Cold showers are one of the simplest ways to practice this. The body resists at first, screaming for warmth, for safety, for the familiar. But the moment you step into that icy water, you are training yourself to stay calm in the face of shock. You are teaching your nervous system that it does not control you, you control it. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes tolerable, and what becomes tolerable eventually becomes empowering. The point isn't to love the cold, but to love the strength you build by enduring it. Science now supports what the Stoics knew centuries ago. Cold exposure reduces inflammation, improves circulation, and even sharpens mental clarity. But beyond biology, there is a deeper lesson. When you can stay calm under cold water, you can stay calm under pressure at work, in arguments, in moments of crisis. You build proof for yourself that you are capable of more than your comfort-loving mind wants to admit. Fasting carries the same principle. Food is everywhere, on shelves, in advertisements, in your fridge waiting to be grabbed. Eating has become less about survival and more about impulse. By choosing to go without food for a period of time, you challenge your impulses and step outside the trap of constant desire. Hunger becomes a teacher, reminding you that you can endure without instantly satisfying every craving. Seneca wrote about this practice, encouraging people to spend a few days each month living simply with the bare minimum, asking themselves, "Is this what I feared?" He knew that once you realize you can survive with less, you stop being controlled by fear of loss. Fasting is not about starving, it's about strengthening. It sharpens the mind, resets the body, and teaches you that your value is not tied to endless consumption. Silence is another form of voluntary discomfort, one that most people overlook. In a world filled with constant noise, being alone with your thoughts can feel unbearable. The urge to check your phone, turn on music, or fill the space with chatter is strong because silence exposes the mind. But that is exactly why it is powerful. By choosing silence, you learn to face your thoughts instead of running from them. Epictetus taught that we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Silence brings those imagined fears to the surface, but it also gives you the chance to see them clearly. Instead of drowning them out with distractions, you sit with them, you breathe with them, and you take away their power. Practicing silence is practicing mastery over yourself. These small hardships, cold showers, fasting, silence, are not random challenges. They are symbolic rehearsals for life itself. When grief comes, when failure arrives, when the unexpected knocks on your door, you will not be crushed because you've trained your mind to stand firm. Each small act of chosen discomfort becomes a shield, a reminder that you can endure far more than you once believed. But voluntary discomfort is not only about resilience, it's also about freedom from fear. Think of how often fear controls you. Fear of rejection, fear of hunger, fear of pain, fear of loss. By practicing discomfort, you strip fear of its strength. You realize that hunger will not break you, cold will not destroy you, silence will not drive you mad. Suddenly, fear loses its grip, and with that freedom comes calm. Modern life convinces you that comfort equals happiness. But has it made you happier? The soft bed, the endless entertainment, the easy food, they soothe for a moment, but they do not strengthen. True joy comes not from avoiding struggle, but from overcoming it. When you walk out of a cold shower alive and awake, when you finish a fast with clarity instead of weakness, when you sit in silence and discover peace in your own mind, you taste a happiness that no purchase, no comfort, no distraction can offer. This practice also changes the way you see luxury. Once you've felt hunger, you value food more deeply. Once you've endured cold, warmth feels like a blessing. Once you've sat in silence, conversation feels like music. Voluntary discomfort sharpens appreciation, turning ordinary moments into gifts. The cup of tea after fasting, the blanket after the cold shower, the laughter after silence. They all shine brighter because you've earned them. But perhaps the most powerful lesson is discipline. Voluntary discomfort is not about the act itself. It's about choosing what your impulses resist. Each time you step into discomfort, you strengthen your ability to choose long-term growth over short-term pleasure. You build self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can do what is hard, that you can hold the line when your mind begs you to retreat. This discipline spills into everything: work, relationships, goals. The same willpower that holds you steady in cold water will hold you steady in the storms of life. Think of it this way: comfort is not bad, but comfort without strength is dangerous. When life removes your comforts, and it will, you will either break or rise. By practicing discomfort now, you are preparing for that moment. You are not waiting for life to test you. You are testing yourself, sharpening yourself, building a core that nothing can shake. This is not about suffering for the sake of suffering. It's about training. A soldier does not hope for war, but he trains so that if it comes, he is ready. In the same way, voluntary discomfort prepares you for a world that does not guarantee safety. a life that does not promise ease. It is the quiet strength of someone who has rehearsed pain and is therefore not surprised when it arrives. And as you repeat these practices, something shifts. The cold is no longer just cold, it is strength. Hunger is no longer just hunger, it is clarity. Silence is no longer just silence, it is peace. What once felt like punishment becomes power. If you begin to practice this daily, you will notice changes. Anxiety will loosen its grip because you will trust yourself to endure. Stress will fade quicker because you will know you can survive without perfect conditions. Gratitude will deepen because you will appreciate what you once ignored. And slowly, without realizing it, you will become the kind of person who does not crumble under pressure, who does not panic at change, who walks through life with calm, steady steps. The truth is, most people live soft lives, and soft lives create fragile minds. But you have another choice. You can train yourself to be unshakable, not by waiting for hardship, but by inviting it in small doses, controlled, deliberate, purposeful. And when you do, you will discover a strength within you that has been there all along, waiting to be awakened. This is the gift of voluntary discomfort. Not suffering, but freedom. Not weakness, but resilience. Not fear, but power. The power to walk through life knowing that no matter what comes, you are ready. And now, as you carry this truth forward, let it settle deep into you. Every moment of chosen discomfort is a step closer to unshakable calm. Let the cold, the hunger, the silence be your teachers. Let them sharpen you, steady you, strengthen you. Because when life tests you, and it will, you will already be prepared. Strength is born in discomfort, but discomfort alone is not enough. You can train your body to endure cold, hunger, and silence, yet the greatest battles are not fought outside, they are fought in the mind. Physical hardship prepares you for life's storms, but there is a deeper exercise, one that reaches into the roots of fear itself. It is the practice of facing in thought the very losses and pains most people spend their whole lives avoiding. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This is not a grim obsession with suffering, but a deliberate training of the mind to meet life with calm. By bringing to the surface what you fear to lose, you rob fear of its sting. The world tells you to avoid negative thoughts, to keep only positive affirmations. But the Stoics knew the truth. The things you try to bury grow in the dark. By looking directly at loss, betrayal, humiliation, and even death, you learn that they cannot enslave you. Death is the clearest starting point. Every breath carries you closer to it, whether you admit it or not. To deny this truth is to live in a haze of false security. But to face it, to meditate on it daily, brings urgency and depth to every moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you could leave life right now, and in that reminder he found clarity. Knowing you might not wake tomorrow turns this day into a gift. Small annoyances shrink. Grudges lose their weight. The things you postpone suddenly matter today, because today might be all you have. Yet the practice does not stop at death. The Stoics taught that you must also rehearse the loss of what you cling to most, your reputation. Most people spend their lives in chains, not of iron, but of opinion. They shape their choices not by reason, but by what others might think. Praise lifts them, criticism crushes them. To meditate on losing your good name is to free yourself from its tyranny. What if the world mocked you? What if friends doubted you? Would you still hold to your values, or would you bend under the pressure of their judgment? By practicing this loss in thought, you discover that reputation is not yours to control, and once you stop chasing it, you gain a kind of dignity no applause can match. Wealth is another anchor that binds the soul. To picture yourself stripped of it, the house gone, the accounts empty, the comforts vanished, is to face one of the deepest modern fears. But what is wealth really? Piles of objects, numbers on a screen, all subject to change, to theft, to ruin. Epictetus reminded his students that what belongs to fortune can always be taken. Only your character is truly yours. By practicing the thought of poverty, you learn not only how little you actually need, but also how rich you already are in the things no one can steal: your reason, your integrity, your ability to act with justice. Relationships too must enter this meditation. Every person you love is mortal, fragile, fleeting. To remember this does not make love weaker, but stronger. Seneca wrote that you must kiss your child with the thought that you may never see them again. To many this sounds cruel, but it is in fact the deepest form of tenderness. When you know that nothing is guaranteed, every embrace, every word, every shared moment becomes sacred. To avoid this truth is to take people for granted. To face it is to love them fully. Identity itself is the final layer. Most live with the illusion that who they are, titles, roles, labels, defines them forever. But what if all of that vanished? What if you were no longer a parent, a worker, a leader, a friend? Would you still know who you are? By stripping yourself in thought of every title, you find the core that remains. The Stoics believed this core is reason, the ability to choose how to respond to life. That is the self no loss can erase. The practice of negative visualization is not meant to depress, but to liberate. When you rehearse the worst in your mind, the grip of fear loosens. You walk through life not hoping everything goes your way, but knowing that even if it doesn't, you will remain steady. This brings a calm that is not fragile, but unshakable. It is the calm of someone who has faced disaster in thought and discovered that even stripped of everything, they still remain whole. Modern psychology confirms this wisdom. Studies on mental rehearsal show that when people picture difficult situations in detail, they handle them better when they arrive. The brain cannot fully distinguish between real and vividly imagined events, so by practicing loss, you prepare your mind like a soldier trains before battle. It is not negativity, it is resilience. Athletes use this to prepare for mistakes, surgeons for complications, astronauts for emergencies. The Stoics used it for life itself. But there is another effect often missed. Negative visualization increases gratitude. When you meditate on losing your health, every breath becomes sweeter. When you think of losing a friend, every conversation becomes more precious. When you picture poverty, even a simple meal feels like wealth. By confronting loss in your mind, you sharpen appreciation in your heart. This gratitude is not shallow. It does not depend on getting more, but on valuing what already is. The practice must be done carefully. It is not enough to say, "Things could be worse." The Stoics advised vivid, deliberate thought. You must picture the loss as if it were happening. The silence of an empty home, the hunger of an empty stomach, the sting of public shame. Stay with it, breathe with it, then remind yourself, even this cannot touch the part of me that chooses how to live. The goal is not despair, but perspective, not fear, but freedom. Applied daily, this discipline transforms how you move through the world. The small frustrations, traffic, delays, insults, lose their sharpness because in your mind you have already walked through greater trials. You do not panic when things break, because you have already practiced being without them. You do not crumble when criticized, because you have already faced rejection in thought and survived. Each meditation builds a reserve of strength, a calm that follows you everywhere. There is also a hidden humility in this practice. By reminding yourself of loss, you remember that nothing is truly yours to own forever. Health, wealth, status, even life itself, all are on loan. To walk through the world with this awareness is to walk lightly, to cling less, to love more, and to demand less. It makes arrogance impossible because you see how fragile everything is. And it makes cruelty unthinkable because you know how quickly roles could reverse. The practice can even shift how you view success. If you meditate on losing it, you stop tying your worth to it. You work not out of desperation, but out of purpose. You enjoy achievement when it comes, but you do not collapse when it leaves. This creates a freedom that few ever know, the freedom to act without being owned by the outcome. Perhaps the greatest benefit is peace. When others are consumed by anxiety, what if I lose my job, my friends, my health, my future? You have already walked that road in thought. You know the losses will hurt, but you also know they will not destroy you. This quiet knowledge allows you to meet the present with steady hands, and that steadiness is contagious. People around you will feel it, lean on it, draw strength from it. To practice negative visualization beyond death is to embrace the full scope of human fragility, reputation, wealth, relationships, identity, and to find within that fragility a strength that cannot be taken. The Stoics were not trying to escape life, but to live it more fully, stripped of illusion, grounded in truth. The truth is that nothing is promised, and when you accept that, you are no longer a slave to fear. You are free to live, to love, to act, with a calm that does not depend on guarantees. Carry this practice with you, not as a burden, but as a secret weapon. When you wake, remind yourself, today could be my last. When you work, remind yourself, wealth may vanish. When you speak, remind yourself, reputation is fragile. When you love, remind yourself, this moment may never return. Each reminder will sharpen your focus, deepen your gratitude, and steady your heart. And so you continue, from the strength of chosen discomfort to the strength of chosen perspective. One trains the body, the other trains the soul. Together, they create a foundation that no storm can shake. When you train your mind through discomfort and strip fear by rehearsing loss, you uncover a deeper truth. So much of life is beyond your control. You may strengthen your body, sharpen your focus, prepare your soul, yet storms will still arrive without your permission. The Stoics taught that peace does not come from trying to control the uncontrollable, but from clearly dividing what belongs to you and what never will. This is the heart of the dichotomy of control. Epictetus reduced the chaos of life into two simple categories: what is up to us and what is not. The challenge of our time is that the lines have become blurred by technology, noise, and constant distraction. Every day you wake up to a screen already demanding your attention. Messages, notifications, updates, algorithms pushing endless streams of content, all designed to pull your emotions in directions you did not choose. You think you are in control, but how often do you reach for your phone without even realizing it? How often do you lose hours scrolling, reacting, comparing? This is the new battlefield where the dichotomy of control must be applied. The Stoics faced emperors, wars, exile. We face digital storms of distraction, envy, and manipulation. The enemy is different, but the principle remains the same. What belongs to you are your choices, your thoughts, your actions. What does not belong to you are the comments on your posts, the algorithm that hides or amplifies your voice, the likes you may or may not receive. Yet many hand over their peace every day by confusing these categories. You may feel anxious when a message is ignored, angry when your opinion online is challenged, insecure when others appear more successful. All of this suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from forgetting which part is yours to control. Think of the design of platforms. They are engineered to exploit human psychology, to keep you hooked through uncertainty and reward. Variable rewards, sometimes you get the like, sometimes you don't, create obsession. The Stoics would call this slavery to externals. Epictetus said, "If you desire what is not yours, you will be disturbed." When you depend on the machine for validation, you have already surrendered your freedom. The first act of resistance is clarity. The algorithm is not yours, but your response is. Another trap is comparison. Technology has made it effortless to measure yourself against thousands of others. Careers, wealth, beauty, achievements, all presented in highlight reels. This constant exposure breeds envy and self-doubt. Yet comparison is outside your control, because you cannot shape the lives of others, only your own. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to focus not on what others do, but on whether his own actions align with nature and reason. To apply this today is to shift attention from the curated lives on your feed back to the reality of your own choices. Are you living with discipline? Are you acting with justice? These are within your control. The images on a screen are not. Even information itself has become a flood. News cycles run endlessly, designed to provoke outrage, fear, urgency. The mind becomes restless, pulled in 100 directions, convinced it must react to every headline. But the Stoic approach is to filter. What can I actually do here? If an event is beyond your influence, let it go. Care about the state of the world, but do not enslave yourself to updates you cannot change. Your responsibility is to act where your hand reaches, to vote, to help your neighbor, to live with virtue. Anxiety over distant storms solves nothing. The dichotomy of control also applies to digital identity. You may craft words, share ideas, post creations, but the way others receive them is not yours to command. Praise and blame belong to them. If you anchor your worth in their reaction, you will rise and fall like a puppet on strings. The Stoic way is to post, speak, share with integrity, then release attachment. What you control is the effort. The reception is not yours. In this lies freedom from the tyranny of external opinion. Time is another casualty of modern technology. Notifications splinter your focus, pulling you into tasks you never intended to do. Hours dissolve in distraction. The Stoics warned that people guard their money carefully but squander their time. Marcus Aurelius wrote that life is long enough if you use it well. To apply the dichotomy today is to reclaim time as your own possession. Silence notifications. Set boundaries. Decide when you will engage with technology instead of being dragged by it. Each moment you reclaim strengthens the fortress of your mind. Yet the Stoic teaching is not to reject technology altogether. Tools are not the enemy. Misuse is. A sword can protect or destroy. A phone can connect or enslave. The question is always, am I using this or is it using me? If you act with intention, technology becomes a servant. If you act without awareness, it becomes your master. The dichotomy of control is the compass that ensures you remain the one holding the reins. There is also the matter of self-image. Online culture encourages performance, a constant shaping of how you appear. You adjust yourself not to live rightly, but to be perceived rightly. This is the corruption of control. The Stoics would remind you that character is yours, reputation is not. When you chase reputation, you live in fear. When you anchor in character, you are unshaken. To apply this now is to speak truth, to live consistently, even if no one approves. Your worth is not measured in metrics, but in the harmony between your actions and your principles. Consider also the way outrage spreads online. Anger is contagious. One comment sparks another, and soon reason is drowned in noise. The Stoics called anger temporary madness, a surrender of reason to impulse. Here again, the line is clear. You cannot control another's words, but you can control whether you feed the fire. To step back, to breathe, to let silence be your answer. This is strength. Not every attack deserves a sword. Sometimes the highest power is refusal to engage. And then there is the subtle erosion of attention. Endless scrolling rewires the brain, making deep focus difficult, patience rare. The Stoic practice of attention, prosoche, is the antidote. It is the art of bringing full awareness to the present task, of living deliberately rather than drifting. In the digital age, prosoche means choosing moments of stillness without devices, reclaiming the ability to focus deeply, to read slowly, to think clearly. Your attention is yours to protect. If you lose it, you lose yourself. Even relationships are reshaped by this principle. Messages left unread, posts unnoticed, responses delayed, all can spark anxiety. But another's attention is not yours to command. What is yours is the love you give, the honesty you share, the presence you offer when together. Expect nothing in return, and you will never be enslaved by disappointment. This is not detachment from people, but detachment from controlling them. Love freely, without conditions, and you love as the Stoics taught, by giving, not by bargaining. The dichotomy also exposes the illusion of permanence in the digital world. Files, accounts, platforms, all feel stable, but can vanish in a moment. Companies shut down, servers fail, rules change. To tie your identity or legacy solely to digital structures is to build on sand. The Stoics would say, use these tools, but anchor your life in virtue, which no server can erase. What is built in character outlives what is built in pixels. Finally, the dichotomy of control in technology calls you to mastery over desire. Each ad, each feed, each notification is crafted to awaken craving for products, for attention, for endless more. But craving for what lies outside you is slavery. Epictetus would urge you to examine every impulse. Is this within my control? If not, release it. True wealth is wanting less, not acquiring more. Applied to technology, this means freeing yourself from the endless scroll of desire. You use tools when they serve a purpose, not when they stir a craving. To live this way is to carry Stoic freedom into the digital age. You do not renounce the world, but you refuse to be mastered by it. You separate clearly. My actions are mine, my judgments are mine, my choices are mine. The algorithm, the likes, the comments, the endless noise, They are not mine. And once you see this line with clarity, peace returns. The dichotomy of control was born in a world of emperors and slaves, but its power has not faded. Today, the chains are invisible, woven of screens and signals, yet the key is the same. Focus only on what belongs to you. Release the rest. In doing so, you build an inner fortress no algorithm can breach, no notification can rattle, no online storm can shake. This is how you reclaim sovereignty in the age of distraction. This is how you step out of digital slavery into Stoic freedom, calm, clear, untouchable. And it begins with a choice only you can make, to live as master of your own mind. Clarity over what belongs to you and what does not brings freedom. But there is another layer of mastery that shapes how you live among others. It is not just what you control in thought or action, but what you choose to release in speech. Words, once spoken, cannot be retrieved. They can build trust or destroy it, heal or wound, open doors or close them forever. In our age of constant noise, messages, debates, arguments, silence has become one of the rarest forms of wisdom. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of passivity, but silence as an act of strength, the ability to hold back when the impulse is to react. The Stoics knew that the tongue is one of the hardest instruments to discipline. Seneca warned that much of life's misery comes from words spoken without thought. When anger rises, the first weapon people reach for is language, sharp and quick, designed to wound. To remain silent in those moments is not weakness, but self-command. By refusing to let impulse spill into speech, you guard both your dignity and your peace. The mind may burn with emotion, but silence cools the fire before it spreads. Modern research supports this timeless truth. Emotional regulation is strengthened when there is a pause between stimulus and response. That pause is silence. Neuroscientists describe how the amygdala sparks in anger, but with restraint, the prefrontal cortex steps in, giving reason time to speak. Silence is not empty. It is space where reason gathers its strength. By choosing silence, you extend that pause, giving yourself the chance to act with clarity instead of regret. In conversations, silence can be a tool of deep attention. Most people listen only to reply, not to understand. Their minds race ahead, preparing arguments, waiting for gaps to fill. But when you choose silence, you create space for the other person's voice. You hear not only their words, but their meaning. True listening requires silence, because it is only when the noise of your own thoughts is stilled that another's truth can enter. Relationships built on this kind of listening grow stronger, because people feel seen and understood in ways rare in ordinary exchange. There is also a subtle authority in silence. Leaders who speak sparingly are often respected more than those who flood every room with words. Measured silence conveys control, confidence, and thoughtfulness. It signals that you are not tossed about by impulse or driven by the need to dominate every space. This is why silence often holds more weight than speech. When you finally choose to speak, your words carry the gravity of someone who has first mastered restraint. Silence is also a shield against manipulation. In debates, arguments, or negotiations, silence unsettles those who expect quick reactions. When you do not answer immediately, others reveal more than they intended, or they show their own impatience. By withholding speech, you gain information, you maintain composure, and you avoid being drawn into traps set by provocation. The Stoics practiced this kind of silence as a form of mental armor. guarding their calm against the turbulence of others. At a deeper level, silence turns the mind inward. Without constant speech, you begin to hear the dialogue within yourself. Most people fear silence because it reveals the noise inside, the worries, the unfinished thoughts, the hidden fears. But facing that inner noise is the path to clarity. By sitting in silence, you become aware of the patterns driving your reactions. You see how often anger rises without cause, how desire pulls without reason, how fear whispers without truth. Silence exposes the illusions that usually hide behind chatter. In daily practice, silence can transform ordinary moments. Walking without headphones, eating without conversation, spending a few minutes each morning in quiet reflection. These simple acts reveal how much noise you carry unconsciously. They slow the pace of life, allowing you to notice details, to savor experiences, to think deeply instead of skimming the surface. Silence enriches life because it creates space for presence. There is also a moral power in withholding words. Much harm in the world comes not from action, but from careless speech, rumors, insults, lies, exaggerations. The Stoics held truth as a sacred duty and silence as its companion. To refrain from speaking when you are tempted to deceive, to hold back gossip even when it would win favor, to resist the urge to wound when you are hurt. This is the discipline that protects both your integrity and the harmony of those around you. Yet silence is not withdrawal. It is not refusal to engage with the world, but the choice to engage wisely. There are times when silence is strength, and there are times when silence is cowardice. The Stoics drew this line carefully. They believed silence should never protect injustice. To remain silent when truth must be spoken is a failure of courage. Active silence is not about avoiding speech, but about mastering it, knowing when words are necessary and when they are not. In a digital age, the value of silence grows even sharper. Online debates, comment sections, endless arguments, all invite instant reaction. Anger spreads faster than thought, and many destroy their peace by answering every provocation. Practicing silence here is revolutionary. To read and not react, to scroll and not engage, to let opinions pass without reply. This is the application of Stoic wisdom to the modern world. You protect your mind by choosing where your energy goes, refusing to throw it into battles that do not matter. Silence also deepens creative thought. The greatest works of philosophy, literature, and art were not born in noise, but in solitude. The mind requires silence to connect ideas, to reflect, to create. Constant conversation fragments attention, but silence gathers it. To practice silence is to fertilize the ground of creativity, to give yourself the space where insight can grow. This practice strengthens character in subtle ways. By withholding words, you learn patience. By listening deeply, you learn empathy. By turning inward, you gain clarity. Each moment of silence is training for the soul, teaching you that not every impulse must be obeyed, not every thought must be shared, not every reaction must be voiced. This is freedom, not repression, but mastery. The Stoics compared uncontrolled speech to an undisciplined army, charging in all directions, destroying more than it protects. Silence is the general that restores order, ensuring words are used with purpose, not wasted in chaos. When you begin to live this way, you notice a change in others too. People begin to value your words more because they know they come from thought, not impulse. Trust grows because your restraint signals reliability. Respect deepens because silence reflects self-command. Practicing silence does not mean cutting yourself off from joy or laughter. It means that when you speak, your words rise from choice, not compulsion. They are not weapons thrown in anger, not filler to avoid discomfort, not masks to hide insecurity. They become tools of truth, connection, and meaning. Silence polishes speech the way sharpening hones a blade. To cultivate this discipline, begin with simple steps. Before replying in anger, pause. Before joining gossip, hold your tongue. Before filling a quiet moment, let it be. At first, silence may feel heavy, awkward, unnatural, but over time, it becomes light, natural, freeing. You discover that silence is not emptiness, but presence, not weakness, but strength. As with all Stoic practices, the goal is not to escape life, but to master it. Voluntary discomfort strengthens endurance. Negative visualization frees you from fear. The dichotomy of control anchors your choices, and now silence disciplines your speech. Each step builds upon the last, weaving together a way of life that is resilient, calm, and unshakable. When others shout, you will remain composed. When provoked, you will not be moved. When tempted to waste your voice, you will hold it until it can serve truth. This is silence as active wisdom, a power that grows stronger the more it is practiced. It is not about saying less, but about saying better. And in a world drowning in noise, this discipline will make your voice stand out, not because it is loud, but because it is rare, deliberate, and true. The discipline of silence gives you mastery over your impulses, but there is another challenge that no restraint of the tongue can escape: the experience of pain. Words can be withheld, actions can be chosen with care, but suffering comes uninvited. It does not ask permission. It arrives through the body that weakens, the heart that breaks, the plans that collapse. Pain is universal, and no philosophy can erase it. Yet the Stoics discovered something few dare to believe: that pain can be more than a burden. It can be a teacher. Not an enemy to run from, but a guide that shapes resilience, wisdom, and depth of character. Seneca himself endured illness that often left him weak and bedridden, yet he treated those moments as a curriculum. Instead of drowning in despair, he studied the lessons that pain offered. He saw that suffering strips away illusions, showing you what truly matters. When you are healthy, you may waste time on trivial concerns, but when the body aches, you learn quickly which desires are unnecessary. Pain has the power to reorder priorities, to cut through distraction, and to reveal what cannot be taken from you. Physical pain, though brutal, teaches endurance. The body resists, cries out, demands relief, but within that storm, the mind has a choice: to be carried away by suffering or to stand apart from it, observing. Epictetus, himself crippled and in constant pain, made this distinction clear. Pain belongs to the body, but judgment belongs to the mind. The moment you recognize this, pain loses part of its tyranny. It still hurts, but it no longer dictates your entire being. You learn to say, "This body suffers, but my mind remains free." Emotional pain brings another set of lessons. Loss, heartbreak, betrayal. These wounds cut deeper than the flesh because they touch the heart of who you are. But here too lies a curriculum. Heartbreak teaches that love is not ownership. To lose someone you cherish forces you to confront the truth that every bond is temporary, every connection fragile. Yet within that fragility is the call to love more fully while you can, to speak kindness before it is too late, to treasure moments instead of assuming they will repeat. Pain carves into the soul an awareness of impermanence, and with it, gratitude. Failure carries its own sting, the collapse of effort, the humiliation of defeat. Many avoid it at all costs, fearing the pain of being exposed. But the Stoic sees failure as a mirror. It reflects weaknesses, illusions, and blind spots that success would have kept hidden. Every failure is instruction, where discipline was lacking, where patience gave way, where pride clouded judgment. To treat failure as a teacher is to transform it into progress. Seneca wrote that misfortune is virtue's opportunity, because without resistance, the soul cannot show its strength. One of the greatest lessons pain teaches is humility. Suffering reminds you that you are not in control of the world, that life is larger than your plans, that the body and heart are fragile. This humility can soften pride, making you gentler with others, more patient with their struggles, more willing to forgive. When you suffer, you understand suffering in others more deeply. Pain, then, can teach compassion, turning your own wounds into bridges of empathy. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Post-traumatic growth studies reveal that those who endure hardship often emerge with greater appreciation of life, deeper relationships, and stronger inner strength. Pain does not automatically produce growth, but when faced with awareness, it can transform. The Stoics anticipated this truth long before research confirmed it. Suffering is not inherently destructive. It depends on how you meet it. There is also the lesson of control. Pain teaches, brutally at times, the limits of what belongs to you. You cannot always choose whether illness comes, whether loss strikes, whether betrayal wounds. But you can always choose the story you attach to that pain. You can see it as cruelty, or you can see it as a forge. Fire consumes or refines depending on how you endure it. The Stoic chooses refinement. Silence once learned can serve here as well. To endure pain without constantly voicing complaint is itself an act of mastery. Complaints multiply suffering by spreading it to others and strengthening its hold on you. But when you meet pain with measured silence, you weaken its power. You do not deny the reality of suffering, but you refuse to give it more space than it deserves. This restraint teaches dignity in adversity, showing that even when circumstances strip everything else, self-respect remains. Pain also teaches detachment from externals. When health fails, you see that strength cannot be taken for granted. When relationships fracture, you realize love cannot be possessed. When wealth is lost, you understand its fragility. Each form of suffering removes one more illusion that life can be controlled or secured by external things. What remains, when those illusions fall away, is the inner citadel, the mind trained to stand independent. Pain points you toward this truth again and again. Only what is within you is truly safe. There is a paradox here. Though pain strips, it also gives. It strips away ease, but it gives depth. It strips away comfort, but it gives perspective. It strips away illusions, but it gives clarity. Those who have suffered deeply often speak with a gravity that cannot be faked. Their words carry weight because they have been tested. Pain teaches authenticity, removing the masks that comfort allows. When you have suffered, You no longer waste energy on pretenses. You live with more honesty, both with yourself and others. Practical application of this Stoic view of pain means reframing how you meet it when it arrives. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What can this teach me?" If your body aches, perhaps it teaches patience, endurance, gratitude for health when it returns. If your heart breaks, perhaps it teaches tenderness, humility, the urgency of loving well. If your plans collapse, perhaps it teaches resilience, adaptability, detachment from outcomes. The question shifts pain from enemy to instructor. To treat pain as teacher also requires balance. It does not mean denying help or avoiding healing. Stoicism was never about ignoring medicine or refusing comfort where it is possible. Rather, it is about attitude. You seek healing while also using the suffering as training. You relieve what you can, but you grow from what remains. In this way, no pain is wasted. Every difficulty becomes part of your education. Pain also refines values. When you suffer, you see what truly sustains you. Some people discover that wealth cannot buy relief, that distraction cannot ease grief, that approval cannot heal wounds. What sustains in those moments is character, wisdom, love, and purpose. Pain teaches you where real strength lies, separating the shallow from the lasting. This clarity shapes a life lived with fewer illusions, fewer wasted pursuits, and more depth. In community, pain can become shared wisdom. When you speak not from theory, but from scars, others listen differently. Your endurance becomes an example, your lessons a source of strength for those still in the storm. Seneca himself wrote letters to guide others from his own experience of weakness and illness. By treating pain as a teacher, you not only learn for yourself, but also become a guide for others. Your suffering is not meaningless when it can serve to strengthen someone else. At its deepest, the Stoic view of pain teaches acceptance, not resignation, not defeat, but the calm acknowledgement that suffering is part of the human condition. To resist this truth is to suffer twice, once from the pain itself and once from the refusal to accept it. By embracing it as natural, as inevitable, as shared by all humanity, you align yourself with the reality of life. Acceptance does not end the pain, but it ends the war within you, bringing a peace that endures even in suffering. And so from silence you learn restraint, and from pain you learn wisdom. Each hardship becomes a lesson, each wound a line of instruction. To live this way is to turn every blow into a stepping stone, every loss into depth, every failure into growth. The Stoics did not promise a painless life. They promised that pain could become the very ground of strength if you choose to learn from it. The curriculum is not easy, but it is priceless. Pain teaches patience, humility, compassion, endurance, clarity, detachment, gratitude, authenticity, and acceptance. It teaches not by lecture, but by trial. And in those trials, if you are willing to learn, you become unshakable, not because pain never touches you, but because you no longer fear its touch. Pain teaches humility, resilience, and clarity, but once the lessons settle in, another truth rises to the surface. The most fragile and irreplaceable resource you will ever hold is not health, not wealth, not even relationships. It is time. Pain shows you how quickly days slip away, how suddenly life changes, how short the horizon really is. And once you see that clearly, the question becomes unavoidable. What are you doing with the hours that are still in your hands? Marcus Aurelius called time more precious than gold. because gold can be stored, traded, and recovered, but time once lost is gone forever. Seneca echoed the same warning in his essay on the shortness of life, where he argued that life is long enough if used wisely, but squandered when scattered on trivialities. These reminders are not meant to frighten, but to awaken you, because while most people guard their money fiercely, they let their hours slip away to distraction, obligation, and thoughtless living. To own your time is the highest form of wealth, and yet it is the one most often abandoned without resistance. Owning time begins with seeing clearly where it leaks. In a world built on distraction, hours vanish into glowing screens, endless scrolling, meaningless chatter, and busyness disguised as productivity. Each notification demands attention. Each platform is designed to keep you engaged longer than you intended. Without awareness, your day is not your own. It belongs to algorithms, to other people's agendas, to impulses you did not choose. The first act of reclaiming time is noticing the theft, understanding that not every demand deserves a response, and not every moment should be surrendered to noise. But awareness alone is not enough. You must practice discipline in how you spend your minutes, because every choice is a trade. When you say yes to one activity, you say no to another. If you give your evening to empty entertainment, you have traded it away from reflection, from creation, from rest. Seneca urged his students to consider not just the cost of money, but the cost of time. He wrote that people are frugal with their wealth, but careless with their days, never realizing that life is being spent with every passing hour. To live wisely is to recognize this exchange and to guard your time as you would a treasure chest. Practical exercises can train this awareness. One method is daily accounting, a practice of writing down where your hours went and asking whether they were well spent. This is not to burden yourself with guilt, but to bring clarity. Just as a merchant keeps records of gold, the philosopher keeps records of time. Over days and weeks, patterns appear, the hidden hours lost to distraction, the neglected moments that could have nourished you. With this clarity, you begin to spend more deliberately, investing your time instead of scattering it. Another practice is intentional boundaries. Decide in advance what you will give your hours to and protect those commitments fiercely. If work expands without limit, it will devour your life. If social obligations multiply unchecked, they will crowd out solitude. By setting clear lines, when to work, when to rest, when to connect, when to be alone, you reclaim control over the flow of your day. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that his time was short and must be used to fulfill his purpose, not wasted on endless trifles. Boundaries are not walls, but priorities written into action. Technology demands particular vigilance. Tools meant to save time often steal it. The Stoic approach is not rejection, but mastery. Use devices when they serve your purpose. Put them aside when they do not. Turn off notifications that pull you from presence. Choose specific times to check messages instead of surrendering to constant interruption. When you hold your attention as a guarded resource, you break free from the modern slavery of endless distraction. The wealth you reclaim is not just hours, but depth, the ability to be fully present in what matters. Time ownership also requires alignment with values. Many people lose their hours not to distraction, but to busyness without meaning, meetings, tasks, obligations that serve no deeper purpose. The Stoics taught that life is not measured by length, but by quality, and quality is determined by whether your actions reflect your principles. Each hour should be asked, is this serving justice, wisdom, courage, or moderation? If not, then you are rich in activity, but poor in life. To reclaim time is to align it with who you intend to be, rather than scattering it on what merely appears urgent. There is also the practice of saying no. This may be one of the hardest disciplines because people fear disappointing others, fear missing opportunities, fear being judged. Yet every yes carries a hidden cost, the loss of hours you can never recover. Seneca argued that nothing is more valuable than the person who lives according to their own nature, undistracted by demands that do not matter. Saying no is not rejection of people, but protection of the one resource you cannot multiply. To master it is to free yourself from living according to other people's expectations. Time ownership extends beyond the present into how you view the future. Many live as though they will always have more time, postponing what matters to some undefined later day. They tell themselves they will travel when retired, write when inspired, reconcile when ready, live when convenient. But life does not guarantee later. The Stoics urged urgency, not the frantic rushing of anxiety, but the clarity that every delay is a theft. If something is worth doing, it deserves a place now, not someday. To live this way is to fill your days with meaning, instead of waiting for permission from time that may never arrive. Another exercise is evening reflection. At the end of the day, review how your hours were used and whether they honored your purpose. This is not to condemn, but to adjust, to learn. Just as an athlete reviews performance, the Stoic reviews time. Over weeks and months, this habit sharpens awareness, teaching you to spend tomorrow more wisely than today. In this way, time is no longer lost unconsciously, but guided intentionally. The wealth of time is also found in presence. Many waste hours not in what they do, but in how they do it. Half distracted, half elsewhere, never fully alive in the moment. To reclaim time is to reclaim attention, to drink fully of the task at hand, whether it is work, conversation, or solitude. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself not to drift, not to scatter his mind, but to do what was before him with his whole self. This turns even ordinary minutes into treasure because they are fully lived. There is also a deeper generosity in time. Money given can be earned again, but time given is a gift of life itself. To spend hours with someone, to listen without distraction, to be present without rushing, these are acts of profound value. The Stoics did not see time ownership as hoarding, but as conscious giving. You give freely where it aligns with virtue, but you do not squander it where it serves only vanity or compulsion. This balance ensures that your time enriches both you and those around you. Owning time means also owning mortality. Every day lived is a day closer to death. This is not cause for despair, but for urgency. Memento mori, the remembrance of death, was for the Stoics the ultimate reminder that time is finite. When you wake, remind yourself that today may be your last, and then ask, how will I spend it? This sharpens priorities instantly. The trivial fades, the essential shines. To live with this awareness is to live with intensity, not wasting what cannot be renewed. Modern life tempts you to believe that productivity is the highest use of time. But true wealth is not measured by how much you produce, but by how meaningfully you live. Rest, reflection, friendship, and stillness are not wasted hours, but essential investments. The Stoics understood balance. To use time well is not to fill it with constant labor, but to align it with what strengthens the soul. Idleness and busyness are equally wasteful if they lack purpose. The real measure is whether your time nourishes virtue. There is also the hidden cost of regret. Many realize too late that their hours were traded for things of no value, chasing approval, accumulating possessions, striving for recognition that vanished quickly. To avoid this fate, you must guard your time now. Seneca urged living as though each day could be your last, because in doing so, you cut away waste and focus on what matters. Regret comes from careless spending. Peace comes from deliberate use. The practical steps are clear. Track your time, set boundaries, align with values, practice saying no, reflect daily, live with presence, give consciously, and remember mortality. Each step transforms time from something that slips through your fingers into something you hold with reverence. This is how time becomes wealth, not in accumulation, but in intentional use. To live with this discipline is to walk through life with awareness that every hour is a coin you spend. Spend it carelessly, and life vanishes into triviality. Spend it wisely, and even a short life becomes rich, full, and meaningful. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the largest empire of his age, knew this truth. Power, gold, armies, all were nothing compared to the treasure of time well used. The same is true for you. And so the lessons build. Pain teaches you what cannot be taken for granted. Time shows you what cannot be replaced. To hold these together is to live with urgency, humility, and clarity. Your wealth is not measured in what you own, but in how you use the hours given to you. Guard them, honor them, and you will find yourself richer than kings. Time, once understood as the rarest wealth, naturally leads to the question of how you choose to spend it. You can guard your hours, shape your days, and live deliberately. But if your energy is still tied to the opinions of others, you are not free. What use is time reclaimed if it is wasted worrying about how you are seen, praised, or judged? This is where the Stoic practice of indifference reveals its power. Not cold detachment, not apathy, but a deliberate refusal to let external approval dictate your worth. Most people live chained to invisible judgments. They measure themselves through the eyes of others, seeking praise, fearing criticism, adjusting their choices to match expectations. One careless remark can ruin their mood. One withheld compliment can plant seeds of doubt. One insult can spiral into endless resentment. The Stoics saw this dependence as slavery of the mind. Epictetus reminded his students that freedom is found not in being praised, but in not needing praise. If your peace rises and falls with public approval, then your peace never truly belongs to you. Indifference here does not mean dismissing life or people. It means distinguishing between what belongs to you and what belongs to others. Your actions, your character, your intentions, these are yours. The interpretations, gossip, and opinions of others, those are not. To be indifferent to them is to reclaim your inner ground, to build strength where others are fragile. A person who depends on approval is like a leaf blown by every wind. A person indifferent to it stands like a rooted tree, steady regardless of storms. Apathy is different. Apathy is the absence of care, the refusal to engage, the rejection of responsibility. Stoic indifference is not that. It is caring deeply about what is within your power, justice, integrity, courage, while refusing to be disturbed by what is not. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he wrote to himself not to be consumed by fame or flattery. He knew both were illusions, passing as quickly as shadows. His indifference was not laziness, but strength, a constant return to what mattered most. The modern world makes this lesson urgent. Social media amplifies approval into numbers, likes, shares, followers. Many live not for their own values, but for the metrics of strangers. The dopamine rush of validation becomes addictive, and the absence of it feels like failure. To practice Stoic indifference is to step outside this cycle, to post or speak or act with honesty, then release concern for how it is received. The courage lies not in never being judged, but in no longer being owned by judgment. This indifference also strengthens relationships. Paradoxically, when you stop needing others to approve of you, you can love them more freely. Approval-based love is conditional. I am happy with you when you admire me. Stoic love is unconditional. I value you regardless of whether you applaud or criticize me. Indifference to approval liberates you to give without demand, to act with kindness without expecting reward, to speak truth even if it displeases. Relationships become more genuine when they are no longer transactions for validation. Indifference to praise is as important as indifference to blame. Many believe only criticism enslaves, but praise can be just as dangerous. Compliments can trap you into repeating behaviors that win approval rather than those aligned with principle. If you act for applause, you are no less captive than if you shrink from insult. The Stoic way is to act rightly because it is right, not because it is noticed. Praise is pleasant, but it is not the compass. Integrity is the compass. This indifference also applies to success and failure. Both are often defined externally, measured by status, recognition, or wealth. To be indifferent to these definitions is to redefine success as alignment with virtue. A day lived with courage, justice, and reason is a success, even if no one sees it, even if it brings no external reward. This frees you from the exhausting pursuit of validation and gives you a deeper satisfaction, one that no loss of reputation can shake. Practical exercises can strengthen this indifference. One is to practice deliberate exposure to disapproval. Speak an unpopular truth calmly. Refuse to conform in trivial matters. Accept small criticisms without defense. Each time you survive disapproval, you prove to yourself that it does not define you. Another exercise is nightly reflection. Ask not whether others approved of your actions, but whether your actions honored your principles. This shifts the center of gravity from external opinion to internal virtue. There is also the discipline of reframing. When insult comes, remind yourself, this is only sound, only words shaped by another's judgment. They do not alter your nature. Epictetus said that if someone calls you foolish and you are not, it means nothing. If you are, then their words only revealed truth. In both cases, their opinion adds nothing to your worth. Reframing disarms insult, showing it as powerless unless you give it weight. Indifference as strength also prepares you for public life. Leaders, creators, teachers, anyone who stands before others will face both applause and attack. To depend on the first and fear the second is to be tossed endlessly between pride and despair, but to stand indifferent to both is to remain steady, able to serve without being broken by opinion. This steadiness is rare, and it is why those who practice it often radiate a quiet authority. People trust those who are not swayed by flattery or threats. At its deepest level, indifference connects to freedom. The Stoics taught that true freedom is not doing whatever you want, but not being controlled by what you cannot control. Approval, reputation, gossip, fame, all belong to others. They may come or go without warning. If your peace depends on them, you are their prisoner. But if you release them, you are free. Free to live by principle, free to choose your actions, free to remain calm even when the crowd turns against you. The strength of Stoic indifference lies in its clarity. It does not harden you into stone, it refines you into steel. You remain caring, engaged, committed to justice, but untouched by the noise of external opinion. This is not detachment from life, but mastery within it. And when you live this way, you discover a calm that cannot be shaken by applause or insult, a dignity that does not rise or fall with the crowd. From guarding time to guarding the soul, the thread of Stoic practice weaves tighter. Each discipline builds on the last. Discomfort strengthens endurance, visualization removes fear, control clarifies responsibility, silence disciplines speech, pain teaches wisdom, time sharpens urgency. Now indifference seals the fortress, ensuring that no opinion from outside can breach your inner ground. To live with such strength is to stand truly free, untouchable, steady, at peace. Indifference to praise and blame builds inner freedom, but even the strongest person cannot walk through life guided only by themselves. Strength grows from within, yet wisdom often requires an example outside us, a mirror that shows what is possible, a reminder of how to act when the mind falters. The Stoics understood this deeply, and they practiced the deliberate use of role models as a way of shaping their character. They called this prosoche, mindful attention, the constant effort to live with awareness and to measure one's actions against higher standards. To adopt a role model in the Stoic sense is not to worship another person, nor to copy them blindly. It is to hold their example before your mind, to use their life as a guide, and to ask yourself in each moment, how would they act here? What would they choose in this situation? By rehearsing their presence in thought, you create an inner compass that points you toward virtue even when your instincts pull you elsewhere. Seneca often spoke of Cato, the Roman statesman who resisted tyranny even at the cost of his life. For Seneca, Cato was not a distant figure of history, but a living reminder to be courageous when tempted by fear. Marcus Aurelius wrote of his teachers, relatives, and mentors in the opening pages of Meditations, recording not their wealth or status, but their qualities of patience, humility, kindness, and integrity. These were the examples he carried with him into every decision, reminding himself that greatness lies not in power, but in character. The practice of role models is powerful because the mind is shaped by what it attends to. If you surround yourself with examples of vanity, greed, or cruelty, those qualities seep into your thoughts. If you keep before you examples of discipline, justice, and wisdom, those qualities take root instead. Attention is nourishment, and the role models you choose become the diet of your soul. This is why the Stoics urged mindful selection. Choose carefully who you allow to guide you, because their presence, even in thought, reshapes your life. One way to practice this is to select a figure whose life embodies a quality you lack. If you struggle with anger, keep before you the image of someone who responds with calm. If you wrestle with fear, hold in mind the courage of one who stood firm in danger. Each time the emotion rises, bring their presence into your awareness. Ask yourself, what would they do? This mental rehearsal weakens the grip of impulse and strengthens the habit of virtue. Over time, their example becomes part of your own character, as if you carry their wisdom inside you. The practice does not require saints or emperors. While Marcus and Seneca provide timeless examples, role models can also be found in contemporary life. a teacher who lives with integrity, a friend who shows patience, a stranger who acts with kindness. These can be adopted as inner guides. The point is not fame, but virtue. Greatness is measured not by recognition, but by alignment with truth. To notice and learn from such figures is to practice prosoche, mindful attention to the examples life constantly offers. Another exercise is journaling in the form of dialogue. Write to your chosen role model as though they were alive. Ask them questions about your struggles, then write their imagined response. This engages your mind in reflection, forcing you to step outside your immediate perspective and see through the lens of their wisdom. Seneca himself wrote letters of advice, many of which may have been addressed as much to himself as to his friend Lucilius. In doing so, he kept the dialogue with virtue alive. Role models also guard against arrogance. It is easy to believe you are virtuous when you measure only against yourself. But when you hold before your mind the patience of Socrates, the courage of Cato, the discipline of Epictetus, you see how far there is to go. This humility is not meant to discourage, but to motivate. To have a higher standard always in sight pulls you upward, reminding you that growth never ends. There is a danger, however, in idolizing role models as flawless. The Stoics warned against this. They saw role models not as perfect beings, but as examples of specific virtues worth imitating. Marcus Aurelius himself admitted his own failures repeatedly in Meditations. The point is not to find a perfect figure, but to learn from the strengths of those who came before. Even flawed examples can teach. From one, you learn courage. From another, you learn restraint. From another, humility. The wise gather virtue wherever it is found, refusing to dismiss it because the vessel is imperfect. The practice of inner role models can also extend to daily decision-making. When faced with a difficult choice, pause and ask, if Seneca stood beside me, what would he counsel? If Marcus observed me now, would he approve? If Epictetus judged my action, would it align with his teachings? These questions create a moment of reflection that interrupts impulse. They invite reason into the decision, reminding you that you are not alone, but guided by centuries of wisdom. Modern psychology supports this practice through the concept of self-distancing. By viewing a situation from the perspective of another, you reduce emotional bias and increase clarity. It is easier to advise a friend than to decide for yourself because distance sharpens perspective. By adopting role models internally, you create that same distance, allowing reason to guide where emotion might otherwise dominate. This practice also strengthens perseverance. In hardship, recalling those who endured greater trials can inspire courage. When facing criticism, remember how Marcus endured the weight of empire without collapsing. When facing illness, recall how Epictetus lived with disability yet taught freedom of the mind. When facing loss, remember how Seneca reminded himself daily of the fragility of life and still chose gratitude. Their presence in your thoughts gives you strength, not because they remove suffering, but because they remind you that suffering can be endured with dignity. Role models also help refine your goals. Modern culture often celebrates wealth, fame, and power. But when you keep in mind the lives of philosophers who valued virtue above all, you see how shallow those goals are. You begin to measure success not by external markers, but by inner progress. Each time you compare yourself not to the rich or famous, but to the wise and disciplined, you shift your compass toward a truer north. A deeper exercise is the creation of a personal pantheon, a collection of figures whose virtues you wish to embody. Perhaps you draw courage from Cato, wisdom from Socrates, humility from Marcus, compassion from a loved one, resilience from a friend. Hold these figures together in your mind, and when faced with difficulty, call upon whichever is most needed. In this way, you are never without guidance because you carry with you a living counsel of virtue. But the most important part of this practice is not thought, but action. To admire a role model without imitating them is vanity. To truly adopt them is to let their example shape your choices, moment by moment. The Stoics taught that philosophy is not words, but deeds, not theory, but life. If you claim Marcus as your guide, then live with his patience. If you admire Epictetus, then practice his discipline. If you value Seneca, then act with his clarity. Role models are not decorations for the mind, but tools for transformation. And so indifference freed you from dependence on others, but role models guide you toward higher living. One guards your peace, the other sharpens your virtue. Together, they create balance, freedom from external chains, and direction toward inner excellence. This is the heart of Stoic practice, not to live adrift, not to live enslaved, but to live guided, steady, and free. Role models give you direction and serve as inner guides, but even the finest examples are still human, bound by the same fragility and limits as you. To move beyond comparison, the Stoics turned to something larger, the perspective of the cosmos itself. They trained the mind to rise above personal concerns, to look at life not from the narrow view of self, but from the vastness of the universe. This practice dissolves pride, shrinks worry, and replaces agitation with humility and peace. To meditate on the cosmic scale is to step outside the confines of personal drama. The argument you had today, the failure that consumed your thoughts, the anxieties that seem unbearable, all of these shrink when seen against the backdrop of centuries, of worlds beyond your own, of stars that burn for millions of years without ever knowing your name. Marcus Aurelius wrote often of this exercise, reminding himself that every human life is a moment in time, a breath in the vastness of eternity. To dwell on this truth is not despair, but liberation. What feels overwhelming is shown for what it is, small, temporary, passing like clouds. This perspective cultivates humility. You see that the universe does not revolve around your ambitions, your struggles, or even your victories. You are part of a greater whole, woven into a fabric of existence that stretches beyond comprehension. Instead of shrinking you, this awareness deepens reverence. You are not the center, but you are a participant in something immense. To see yourself in this way removes arrogance, because how can pride survive when set against galaxies? Yet, it also removes despair, because your troubles are not eternal. They are brief and fleeting. One practical method is to visualize yourself rising above the earth. Begin by seeing your life as it is now, your body, your surroundings, the details of your room. Then zoom out to your neighborhood, your city, your country, until the entire earth is below you. From this vantage, your problems take on proportion. The deadline, the insult, the missed opportunity. What weight do they hold when the planet itself spins silently through infinite space? By practicing this mental zoom, you teach your mind to hold perspective even when pulled by emotion. This meditation also reshapes how you view time. Most people live as if the present crisis will last forever, but the cosmic scale reveals that nothing endures unchanged. Civilizations rise and fall, stars are born and die, seas form and vanish. Your lifespan, brief as it is, becomes precious not because it dominates, but because it is finite. Every moment is rare because it is fleeting. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to consider how many once great rulers now lie forgotten, their names buried in history. If even emperors are swallowed by time, how much more foolish to cling to reputation or possessions. To embrace cosmic perspective is to release the illusion of permanence and find peace in transience. This practice also cultivates gratitude. When you see yourself as a small part of the universe, every gift of existence feels extraordinary. The fact that you breathe, that you can think, that you can love, all of it is improbable against the backdrop of vast silence. Instead of being consumed by what is missing, you are filled with awe for what already is. The ordinary becomes miraculous when seen from the edge of the cosmos. Gratitude deepens because you no longer measure life only against your desires, but against the vast chance of existence itself. Humility, born from cosmic meditation, does not weaken action. It strengthens it. When you realize how small your life is, you may think nothing matters. But the Stoics saw the opposite. Everything matters precisely because it is fleeting. You cannot control the span of eternity, but you can control how you live in the brief moment given to you. When seen against the universe, kindness, courage, and integrity become even more vital because they are the only contributions you can make to the whole. The vastness humbles you, but it also calls you to live with purpose. This practice also loosens the grip of fear. Fear thrives on exaggeration, on the belief that what you face is unbearable. But when you hold your fear against the universe, it shrinks. Fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of embarrassment. All of these fade when you realize how little they matter on a cosmic scale. This is not to dismiss human emotion, but to give it proportion. Fear loses its tyranny when you see it for what it is, a ripple on the surface of a vast ocean. The cosmic view also reveals unity. Differences of status, wealth, and reputation vanish when set against eternity. The rich and poor, the powerful and weak, the famous and forgotten, all share the same fate, the same brief passage through existence. This awareness breeds compassion. You no longer envy or despise others, because in the grand scheme you stand equal. The divisions that stir resentment shrink in importance. Compassion grows because you see every human as a fellow traveler on a tiny planet spinning in infinite space. This meditation can also sharpen focus. When you realize how small your time is, you stop scattering it on trivial pursuits. The cosmic scale is not meant to paralyze, but to clarify. What do you want to give your brief hours to? What will matter, not in centuries, but in the truth of your own conscience? The vastness strips away illusion, leaving only what is essential. It is a compass pointing you back to what deserves attention: virtue, love, wisdom, and presence. There is also a calming effect in recognizing the cycles of nature. Seasons turn, stars burn, tides rise and fall. Life follows the same pattern: growth, decline, renewal. To resist this cycle is to suffer. To accept it is to find peace. Cosmic meditation aligns you with these rhythms. It reminds you that change is natural, that loss is not punishment, but part of the flow. By seeing your life as part of a larger pattern, you learn to release resistance and live in harmony with what is. Science today amplifies what the Stoics intuited. Astronomy reveals the scale of galaxies, billions of light years stretching beyond imagination. Biology reveals the complexity of life arising from atoms. Physics reveals the dance of forces that sustain existence. To contemplate these truths is to feel wonder and humility. The Stoic practice of cosmic perspective anticipated what modern science now confirms, that we are both insignificant and extraordinary, tiny in scale, yet capable of reason and reflection within this vast universe. To practice daily, begin by pausing in moments of agitation. Step back in thought and ask, how will this appear from the height of centuries, from the vantage of the cosmos? Train your mind to rise above, to zoom out, to place your problem against eternity. Over time, this habit reshapes your responses. What once provoked anger now seems trivial. What once caused despair now feels bearable. The weight of problems lightens because you have learned to see beyond them. Cosmic perspective is not escape. It does not deny suffering or responsibility. Instead, it contextualizes them, showing that they are part of a larger whole. It gives you humility without despair, reverence without paralysis, clarity without detachment. You live with both awareness of your smallness and awareness of your duty within that smallness. You accept that you cannot change the universe, but you can live nobly within it. Thus, from role models who shape your path, you ascend to the cosmos that shapes your vision. One gives you examples of virtue to follow. The other gives you perspective that keeps pride and fear in check. Together, they steady your steps and expand your sight. To hold the universe in mind is to carry peace, because what once seemed overwhelming is now seen for what it truly is, small, passing, part of a greater whole. Seeing life through the scale of the cosmos dissolves pride and shrinks fear. But there is one emotion that still burns even when we know how small we are: anger. No matter how vast the stars above or how fleeting our lives below, a sharp word, an insult, or a betrayal can set fire to the mind. Seneca called anger a form of temporary madness, a force that drives reason from its throne and replaces it with impulse. It blinds judgment, twists speech, and often harms not the target but the one who carries it. If time is the most precious wealth, then anger is theft. It steals hours, relationships, and peace. In the ancient world, anger might erupt in the Senate, on the battlefield, or in family quarrels. Today, it explodes in offices, across dinner tables, and most visibly on the endless stage of social media. The settings are different, but the nature of anger has not changed. It still begins as a spark, an expectation unmet, a sense of being disrespected, a clash of pride, and it grows when not checked. The Stoics were not naive. They knew anger cannot always be prevented from arising, but they taught that it can be mastered, transformed, and restrained before it becomes destruction. In the workplace, anger often hides beneath the word stress. Deadlines press, colleagues frustrate, managers demand, and the slow build of irritation eventually bursts into sharp tones or silent resentment. The Stoic approach is to pause and separate what belongs to you from what does not. If a colleague speaks harshly, their words are theirs, but your response is yours. If deadlines are unrealistic, the situation is external, but the clarity with which you act is internal. Seneca urged reflection before reaction, reminding us that most workplace fires are fueled not by the problem itself, but by the ego's demand to be treated as it believes it deserves. By practicing restraint, you break the chain that turns pressure into conflict. Social media magnifies anger like a mirror that multiplies reflections. Outrage is rewarded with likes, algorithms push the most heated voices, and debates spiral into hostility. Here, Seneca's warning becomes urgent. Anger thrives in crowds because it feels justified when shared, but collective madness is still madness. The Stoic practice is silence and withdrawal when provoked, not as cowardice, but as strength. To scroll past an insult without reply, to disengage from fruitless argument, to refuse the bait of outrage, these acts preserve dignity. The value of peace outweighs the fleeting satisfaction of winning a digital quarrel. Family arguments are often the hardest battlefield because love and expectation intertwine. Words cut deeper when spoken by those closest to you, and pride resists most strongly when challenged by kin. The Stoics counseled empathy here. Remember that others act according to their understanding, just as you do. A harsh remark from a parent or sibling often arises from their own pain, not from reason. If you train yourself to see their outburst as the product of ignorance or suffering, you create space for compassion rather than retaliation. To meet anger with calm is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength within family bonds. One method Seneca recommended is to rehearse provocations before they come. Just as soldiers train before battle, the mind must prepare for insults, delays, betrayals. Tell yourself in advance, today I will encounter rudeness. Today I may face criticism. Today someone will misunderstand me. By expecting these things, you blunt their sting when they arrive. Anger thrives on surprise. Preparation disarms it. The more you accept that others are fallible, the less you demand perfection from them, and the calmer your response becomes. Another practice is physical restraint. Anger often shows first in the body, racing heartbeat, tightening jaw, rising voice. By noticing these signals early, you can intervene. Slow your breath, step away. Let silence hold the space. Seneca advised that the first step to mastering anger is to delay it. Even a small pause can be enough to restore reason before the storm overtakes you. The discipline of silence learned earlier becomes a shield here, preventing words that cannot be withdrawn. Reframing is also essential. Anger thrives on interpretation. They disrespected me. This is unfair. I should not have to endure this. But if you shift perspective, anger weakens. Perhaps the insult says more about the other person's state than about your worth. Perhaps the delay that frustrates you is trivial in the scope of a lifetime. Perhaps the criticism contains a truth you can use. By choosing a new frame, you deny anger its fuel and replace it with patience or even gratitude. In leadership, the ability to master anger is crucial. A leader who reacts impulsively breeds fear and instability. One who restrains anger fosters trust and respect. Marcus Aurelius, ruling over an empire, reminded himself daily to meet others with patience, knowing that anger at human weakness was itself a weakness. Leaders today face constant provocation, employees who falter, critics who attack, crises that escalate. To meet these with calm steadiness is to embody Stoic strength. Anger also corrodes health. Seneca noted how it consumes the body, raising blood pressure, tightening muscles, weakening vitality. Modern medicine confirms this. Chronic anger damages the heart, the immune system, and the mind. To master anger is therefore not only virtue, but medicine. Peace of mind becomes peace of body. Restraint becomes longevity. The cost of indulging anger is paid in both spirit and flesh. Injustice often tempts the mind to justify anger. How can one not be angry when wronged? But the Stoics drew a distinction. Anger is not required for action. Justice can be pursued with clarity, without rage. Anger clouds reason, making solutions harder to find. To act against injustice with calm is more effective, because it chooses strategy over impulse, persistence over explosion. The abolition of anger is not indifference to wrong, but the removal of poison from the pursuit of right. Forgiveness plays a role here, not as excusing harm, but as releasing yourself from chains. Anger often lingers long after the event, replaying insults, nourishing grudges. This is suffering carried voluntarily. Seneca urged letting go, because to carry anger is to drink poison expecting another to die. Forgiveness is freedom, not for the offender, but for yourself. It clears the mind of clutter, allowing energy to be directed toward growth rather than resentment. Training children in anger management was also part of Stoic practice. They believed habits form early, and unchecked temper grows into a lifelong weakness. Teaching patience, modeling calm responses, guiding young minds to understand that anger harms the angry more than the target. These were duties of parents and teachers. In modern life, this remains urgent. A generation raised on instant gratification and constant stimulation must learn restraint to thrive in a world that rewards calm focus over impulsive reaction. The discipline extends even to self-directed anger. Many lash out not at others, but at themselves, consumed by regret, self-blame, or frustration with their own failings. The Stoics taught gentleness toward oneself. To berate yourself endlessly is as irrational as to rage at another. It does not heal, it only wounds further. Reflection should correct without cruelty. Patience with your own growth is as vital as patience with the faults of others. Anger as madness is best mastered by consistent practice, not sudden resolution. Each day offers opportunities: the traffic that delays you, the colleague who interrupts, the comment online that provokes. Each is training. By meeting them with calm, you strengthen the muscle of restraint. Over time, the habit of anger weakens, and the habit of calm strengthens. The goal is not to never feel anger rise, it is to never let it rule. From the cosmic scale that shows the smallness of your problems, you descend back to the everyday, where insults, delays, and injustices test your discipline. Here, the practice of mastering anger becomes essential. Without it, reason is lost. With it, peace remains. To treat anger as madness is to refuse its rule, to protect your dignity, your health, and your relationships. It is to live, as Seneca urged, calm in provocation, steady in conflict, unbroken by the fire that consumes so many. Anger mastered brings calm, but calm alone is not enough. Beneath every conflict, every desire, every fear lies the shadow that most people avoid at all costs: death. It is the truth everyone knows, yet few allow themselves to face directly. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Epictetus each reminded themselves daily that life is not endless, that every breath moves us closer to the end. Where most shrink from this thought in terror, the Stoics turned it into power. They did not meditate on death to despair, but to sharpen life. Death was not to be feared. It was to be used as a constant reminder that time is short, that what matters must be done now, that every moment carries weight, because it may be the last. Fear of death drains life, but awareness of death fills it with urgency. Those who deny mortality often waste their days on trivialities, acting as if hours are infinite. They postpone love, delay projects, withhold forgiveness, telling themselves there will be time later. But later is never guaranteed. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." When death is placed before your eyes, indecision fades. What seemed important yesterday suddenly feels small, and what was neglected suddenly demands attention. Mortality, when embraced, acts as a filter. It clarifies what deserves your energy and what does not. Many anxieties lose their power when measured against the end. Will the insult that upset you matter on your deathbed? Will the hours wasted in envy or resentment be a comfort when life closes? Death gives proportion to everything. It strips away illusion and forces honesty. What remains after that stripping is what truly matters. Acts of love, moments of courage, habits of virtue, the legacy of character. Practical exercises bring this perspective into daily life. One is the simple act of morning reflection. Remind yourself upon waking that this day could be your last. Not to terrify yourself, but to infuse the hours ahead with intensity. Would you waste the day in distraction if you knew it might be your final one? Another exercise is evening reflection, reviewing the day as though it were the closing chapter of your life. Did you live it with integrity? Did you act in accordance with your values? These small reminders turn ordinary days into precious opportunities. Another method is to use ordinary objects as triggers. The Stoics would see funerals, illness, and aging not as reasons to despair, but as reminders of life's brevity. In the modern world, you can use a watch, a key, or even your phone as symbols. Each time you see them, recall that time is passing. These physical anchors make mortality part of your awareness, not as dread, but as guidance. Mortality also strengthens courage. Many fears shrink when placed beside death. Fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of failure. These lose power when you realize that in the end, they are insignificant. Death is the great equalizer. It comes for all, regardless of success or humiliation. When you see this clearly, you act more boldly. You write the book, speak the truth, pursue the calling, because the ultimate deadline looms and hesitation wastes the only resource you cannot renew. Mortality also deepens love. When you know you may not see someone again, every interaction becomes sacred. Seneca urged his students to embrace loved ones with the thought that they may not return. This does not diminish affection, but intensifies it. Words of kindness are spoken sooner, forgiveness is granted faster, gratitude is expressed more often. To live with death in mind is to live with love unrestrained by delay. The awareness of death also cuts through pride. Wealth, fame, and power vanish at the grave. No matter how high you rise, your body will one day rest in the earth like all others. This recognition humbles arrogance. It reminds you that virtue is the only true possession that death cannot erase. The pursuit of character becomes the only pursuit that endures beyond the moment. Modern psychology supports this Stoic insight. Studies in existential psychology show that awareness of mortality can lead to greater focus, stronger relationships, and more authentic living. When death is denied, people drift into distraction. When death is acknowledged, they live with intention. The Stoics practiced what science now confirms. Mortality, faced directly, is a catalyst for clarity. Death also reveals the futility of delay. How many projects are left unfinished because people wait for perfect conditions? How many dreams are buried not by failure, but by postponement? To meditate on death is to realize that perfection is an illusion and delay is a thief. Action must be taken now, imperfectly if necessary, because time does not pause for hesitation. Mortality teaches urgency, not the urgency of panic, but of presence, the urgency to live fully in each moment. There is also a freedom that comes from accepting death. Many choices are made not out of desire, but out of fear of loss. But when you accept that loss is inevitable, fear loosens its hold. You stop clinging so tightly to possessions, to status, to appearances, because you know they cannot be carried beyond the grave. This detachment does not make life empty. It makes it lighter. You enjoy without clutching. You love without grasping. You live without fear of letting go. The Stoics also saw death as natural, part of the same cycle that governs stars and seasons. Marcus reminded himself that death is not evil, but simply a process of change, as natural as birth. To fear death is to fear nature itself. Acceptance of mortality is acceptance of being part of the larger whole. This cosmic harmony transforms dread into peace. Death is not a punishment, but a return, a dissolving into the same elements that formed you. To practice this acceptance, spend time in nature. Watch the cycle of growth and decay in plants, the turning of seasons, the setting of the sun. Each is a reminder that change is natural. As you see it in the world, you begin to accept it in yourself. This practice eases fear and replaces it with reverence. You do not resist the flow, you join it. Mortality also sharpens moral responsibility. Knowing time is short makes you less willing to compromise integrity. You are less likely to waste energy on trivial grudges, less likely to act unjustly, less likely to postpone the pursuit of wisdom. Death's presence disciplines your choices. It whispers constantly, "Live well, because you may not have another chance." One of the deepest gifts of mortality is perspective. When you stand before death in thought, you see how much of life is wasted on what does not matter. Approval, envy, possessions, grudges. This recognition frees you to focus on what will matter at the end, whether you lived with courage, whether you were kind, whether you grew wiser, whether you loved deeply. Death clears the fog of distraction, revealing the path to a meaningful life. And so the Stoic view of death is not darkness, but light. It is the ultimate teacher, stripping away illusion, sharpening urgency, deepening love, humbling pride, and anchoring virtue. To live with death before your eyes is to live with life fully in your hands. Fear of death shrinks existence. Awareness of it expands it. From anger mastered, you move to mortality embraced. One guards your peace in conflict, the other fuels your life with urgency. Together, they form a shield and a compass, protection from destruction and direction toward meaning. To use death not as fear, but as motivation, is to transform the shadow that terrifies into the fire that drives you forward, ensuring that when the end comes, you can say not that you waited, but that you lived. Facing death as a reminder of urgency strips away hesitation and awakens a life of clarity. But there is still a deeper challenge, not merely to accept what happens, but to embrace it. The Stoics called this Amor, fati, the love of fate. It is not enough to endure misfortune with patience or to face mortality with calm. The higher practice is to welcome every event, large or small, as if it were chosen for you. This does not mean passive surrender. It means aligning so fully with the flow of life that every outcome, whether joy or hardship, is received as part of your path. Many think of amor fati only in the face of tragedy. illness, loss, disaster. Yet its true power is built in the small, ordinary moments of daily living. The spilled coffee that stains your shirt before work, the traffic jam that makes you late, the unexpected rain that ruins your plans. These are the training grounds of fate's love. To practice on the small stage is to prepare for the great trials. If you cannot meet small inconveniences with grace, how will you meet catastrophe with strength? The discipline is to treat each interruption not as an obstacle, but as a teacher, not as an enemy, but as part of the story you are meant to live. Start with traffic. Hours of life are often lost in congestion, frustration building with every delay. Most treat this as wasted time, but Amor fati reframes it. The delay is not against you, it is part of your day. You cannot change the flow of cars, but you can choose how to live within it. The jam becomes an opportunity for patience, for reflection, for listening to an audiobook, for practicing calm. By choosing to love the delay, you transform annoyance into training. The lesson is simple. The world will not always move at your pace, but you can learn to move at peace with the world. Then there is the small accident, the spilled drink, the broken glass, the lost keys. These events often trigger irritation far out of proportion to their scale. Yet what is really threatened? Only the illusion of control. The Stoics would say, if you cannot prevent it, then it was meant to happen. Love it, because it reminds you that perfection is not possible. A stain on your clothes is a reminder that you are not untouchable, that life is messy, and that dignity is measured not in spotless appearances, but in graceful responses. To embrace the spill is to strengthen resilience, to turn inconvenience into opportunity. Weather offers another test. Rain ruins plans, heat exhausts, cold bites, yet the sky does not ask permission. To resist the weather is to resist reality itself. Amor fati teaches a shift. Instead of complaining, receive the day as it arrives. Rain is nourishment. Sun is vitality. Wind is cleansing. Cold is bracing. Each condition, disliked or loved, is part of nature's rhythm. When you embrace it as such, every day becomes acceptable, even beautiful, because it is exactly as it must be. The practice extends to conversations. Perhaps someone interrupts you, misunderstands you, or criticizes unfairly. Most meet this with annoyance or defensiveness, but Amor fati welcomes it. The interruption becomes a chance to practice patience, the misunderstanding a chance to clarify gently, the criticism a chance to test humility. Every interaction, pleasant or unpleasant, can be treated as material for growth. When you love the difficulty, it no longer harms you, it serves you. This way of living transforms daily life. Instead of constantly fighting against reality, you align with it. Complaints lose their grip because you no longer demand that life be other than it is. Resentment fades because every event is interpreted as part of your path. Even loss, when seen through this lens, becomes bearable. If it has come, it was meant to come, and your task is not to resist, but to love. The training is not easy. The mind naturally wants comfort, predictability, ease. But ease breeds weakness. By practicing Amor fati in small irritations, you strengthen the muscle of acceptance for greater trials. Each minor frustration is like a weight in the gym of the soul. Lift it willingly, and when heavier burdens arrive, you will be ready. Practical exercises make this real. One method is conscious reframing. When something goes wrong, pause and say to yourself, "This is for me, not against me." The words change the story. Instead of being a victim of fate, You become a student of it. Another exercise is gratitude in the moment. When plans are interrupted, thank life for the reminder that control is limited. When you are delayed, thank life for the extra time to practice patience. Gratitude transforms irritation into strength. Amor fati also protects joy. When you love whatever comes, you cannot be robbed of happiness. If the day unfolds as planned, you are content. If it collapses into chaos, you are still content, because you receive it with love. This creates an unshakable serenity, a joy independent of circumstances. Where others are tossed between delight and despair, you remain steady, because for you, every outcome is acceptable. There is also a deeper humility in this practice. To love fate is to acknowledge that you do not see the full design of life. What feels like a setback may be a redirection. What feels like loss may create space for growth. By trusting the whole, you release the demand to control every detail. You accept that life is wiser than your plans. This humility brings peace because you no longer argue with reality. You walk with it. Modern psychology supports this wisdom. Research on acceptance shows that those who embrace rather than resist difficulty experience less stress and greater well-being. Cognitive reframing, mindfulness, and acceptance-based therapies all echo what the Stoics practiced, that peace comes not from controlling life, but from aligning with it. Amor fati is simply the philosophical expression of this truth. The discipline also cultivates creativity. When setbacks are loved rather than hated, they spark adaptation. Missed opportunities lead to new ones. Broken plans open unseen paths. Resistance blocks creativity, but acceptance frees it. By treating each twist of fate as material, you discover possibilities others overlook. This is how Amor fati transforms even failure into fuel, turning obstacles into stepping stones. The strength built here spreads to every corner of life. Work becomes less stressful because you stop demanding perfection. Relationships grow stronger because you stop resenting flaws. Personal growth accelerates because you use every challenge as practice. The external world does not soften, but your interpretation transforms it. Amor fati in small things is the ground on which larger strength is built. To love the spilled drink, the lost key, the ruined plan, is to train the mind for illness, loss, and mortality. The daily practice builds the habit, and the habit becomes character. In time, love of fate ceases to be an effort and becomes your nature. From death, you learn urgency, and through Amor fati, you learn acceptance. Together, they create balance. Urgency drives you to act. Acceptance steadies you when results differ from plans. Life is no longer a battle against what happens, but a harmony with it. To practice Amor fati is to live with a heart open to all outcomes, seeing in each not a curse, but a gift, not a loss, but a lesson, not an accident, but part of the design. When you reach this state, nothing can rob you of peace. Fate may bring storms, but you will call them necessary. Fate may bring joy, and you will call it grace. Fate may bring sorrow, and you will call it growth. To love what comes is to live invulnerable, unbroken, and free. To welcome fate in every form, even in the smallest inconveniences, is to train the heart for acceptance. Yet acceptance alone is not enough, because the world will still strike with force. Insults, losses, chaos, misfortune. No matter how much you practice love of what comes, you also need a place within that cannot be shaken by storms outside. Marcus Aurelius called this the inner citadel, a fortress built not of stone but of reason, self-mastery and clarity. It is the one place no enemy can invade, no insult can penetrate, no misfortune can destroy. The inner citadel is not escape from life, but strength within it. Soldiers built walls to keep invaders out. The Stoic builds the citadel of the mind to guard peace against all external assaults. To construct it is to establish within yourself a sanctuary where judgment remains clear even when the world collapses. When chaos rages around you, the citadel gives calm. When insult lashes at you, the citadel gives dignity. When fortune abandons you, the citadel gives steadiness. This fortress is built on reason. Marcus reminded himself that nothing has the power to harm the mind unless the mind consents. Insults are only words, events are only appearances, misfortunes are only changes in external conditions. The judgment you attach to them, this is where pain grows or dissolves. Within the citadel, you train the habit of questioning impressions. Is this truly harm, or is it only discomfort? Is this truly loss, or is it change? The mind that asks these questions builds walls stronger than any stone. Discipline forms the gate of the citadel. Without discipline, the fortress lies open, vulnerable to every provocation. With discipline, you decide what enters. Anger knocks, and you pause before opening. Fear whispers, and you choose whether to listen. Desire presses, and you examine its worth before granting entry. This is not repression, but sovereignty, the recognition that your mind is your domain, and only you choose what thoughts may dwell there. The citadel also requires self-knowledge. To build it, you must know your weaknesses. Marcus spoke often of his tendency toward irritation, reminding himself not to let it erode his calm. Each person must identify the cracks in their walls, anger, envy, pride, fear, and strengthen them through practice. Reflection. Each evening serves this purpose. Review the day. Where did your defenses hold? Where did they falter? What reinforcement is needed tomorrow? In this way, the citadel grows stronger with each passing day. The sanctuary is also sustained by simplicity. The more you depend on external things, the more doors you open to invasion. Wealth, reputation, luxury, all invite anxiety because they are vulnerable to loss. The Stoic keeps needs simple, making the fortress easier to defend. When peace depends only on what lies within, nothing outside can truly threaten it. Poverty cannot breach it, nor illness, nor insult. Simplicity is strength, because it reduces what the world can take from you. Another foundation stone is perspective. Marcus often reminded himself of the brevity of life, of how quickly events pass, of how small human affairs are in the scope of eternity. By seeing life this way, he denied problems the power to overwhelm. What feels unbearable shrinks when seen against centuries. Perspective is a wall within the citadel, keeping troubles small and the mind unshaken. Yet this inner sanctuary is not isolation. It is not a retreat into cold indifference, but a place from which to act with clarity. From within the citadel, you can engage with the world more fully because you are not enslaved by it. When insult comes, you can respond with calm words instead of retaliation. When misfortune strikes, you can act with courage instead of despair. When others collapse in chaos, you can provide steadiness. The citadel empowers you not by removing you from life, but by making you unbreakable within it. Practical exercises help construct this fortress. One is the practice of mental rehearsal. Each morning, remind yourself, Today I may face insult, delay, betrayal, loss. When they come, they will not surprise you, and your citadel will be ready. Another is deliberate withdrawal into silence for reflection, where you test impressions, question desires, and remind yourself of your principles. Each retreat into this silence strengthens the walls of your fortress, preparing you to re-enter the world with calm. Meditation on nature also reinforces the citadel. When you see yourself as part of the greater whole, insults lose their weight, because you realize they are small ripples in a vast ocean. Misfortunes lose their sting, because they are natural changes in the flow of life. Aligning your mind with nature makes your citadel not a rigid prison, but a living harmony with the world. The citadel is also sustained by gratitude. By focusing on what remains rather than what is lost, you reinforce your defenses. Gratitude turns scarcity into wealth, misfortune into opportunity, suffering into growth. Within the citadel, gratitude is the shield that reflects bitterness away, leaving peace intact. Leaders especially need this inner fortress. Marcus Aurelius bore the weight of empire, facing betrayal, war, plague, and political strife. Yet he returned each night to his citadel, writing words that preserved his calm. In modern life, leaders face constant pressure, businesses collapsing, families in turmoil, crises multiplying. Without an inner fortress, such pressures destroy. With it, they refine. A leader with a citadel becomes a source of stability for all who depend on them. The citadel also protects against the most subtle enemy, self-doubt. Often the harshest insults come not from others, but from within. The voice of insecurity, regret, or guilt can erode peace more than any external attack. But within the citadel, you learn to examine these voices. Are they rational? Do they serve growth? If not, they are dismissed. The citadel is not silent, but it is discerning. It permits only truth and virtue to guide thought. Building this sanctuary requires patience. It is not constructed in a day, but through daily effort. Each moment of restraint, each act of reflection, each choice of virtue over impulse lays another stone. Slowly, the walls rise. Over time, you notice change. Insults no longer sting as sharply. Losses no longer paralyze. Chaos no longer shakes you. The citadel grows, and with it, your freedom. This fortress is not meant to isolate you from love or compassion. On the contrary, it makes you more capable of both. When you are unshaken by insult, you can respond with kindness. When you are not destroyed by loss, you can comfort others in theirs. When chaos rages, your calm steadies those around you. The citadel does not close you off from humanity. It frees you to serve it better. From Amor fati, you learn to welcome events, and from the inner citadel, you learn to withstand them. One opens your heart to life as it is. The other guards your mind against being broken by it. Together they create resilience that no insult, no chaos, no misfortune can breach. To carry such a sanctuary within you is to carry peace everywhere, a fortress of reason that stands unshaken even in the fiercest storm. The inner citadel protects you from insult, chaos, and loss. But even the strongest fortress can be undone from within if desire is not mastered. External attacks may fail, yet the constant pull of wanting more wealth, more comfort, more recognition, erodes peace like water dripping on stone. Marcus Aurelius warned himself often about this hidden danger, because unchecked desire chains the mind just as surely as fear. True freedom is not found in getting everything you want, but in reducing what you need. The discipline of desire is the art of learning to want less, not by denying life's gifts, but by training yourself to recognize the abundance already present. Seneca wrote that poverty is not the absence of wealth, but the desire for more. A person who owns little but is content is richer than one who owns much and is never satisfied. This shift is the essence of Stoic discipline. The external world may offer endless temptations, but peace depends on the internal measure you place on them. The hunger for what you do not have blinds you to what is already in your hands. The first step is awareness, seeing how often dissatisfaction is self-created, how often you believe happiness lies just beyond your current possessions, relationships, or achievements. Modern life intensifies this trap. Advertising is designed to cultivate desire, to convince you that what you have is not enough. Technology fuels comparison, showing endless images of others living what appears to be better lives. Without discipline, the mind becomes restless, constantly reaching, never arriving. The Stoic solution is not withdrawal from the world, but mastery within it, training the mind to see through illusion and to root happiness in sufficiency, not excess. One practice is deliberate appreciation. Each day, pause to note what already surrounds you: health, shelter, food, companionship, the simple ability to breathe. Marcus often reminded himself of the gift of being alive at all, of the chance to act justly for another day. When you recognize how much has been granted without effort, craving diminishes. Gratitude is not sentimental. It is a weapon against insatiability. Another exercise is voluntary simplicity. Choose moments to live with less than you could, not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself of what is truly necessary. Seneca advised sleeping on the floor, wearing rough clothing, or eating plain food occasionally, asking afterward, "Is this what I feared?" Such practices strip desire of its illusions. You discover that you need far less than you thought, and luxury, when it comes, can be enjoyed without dependence. Desire also weakens when examined rationally. Many wants lose power when you question their true value. Do you crave wealth for its own sake, or for the security and freedom you believe it brings? Do you seek recognition for genuine purpose, or to soothe insecurity? By dissecting desires, you reveal which are based on reason and which are shadows of impulse. Those that align with virtue, justice, wisdom, courage can be pursued. Those born from vanity or fear can be dismissed. The discipline of desire also involves training the imagination. Instead of picturing the joy of obtaining what you lack, practice picturing contentment with what you already hold. The mind rehearses craving by imagining satisfaction in the future. You can redirect it to rehearse satisfaction in the present. This reshapes the emotional pull of desire, weakening its hold over time. Another method is to focus on sufficiency rather than abundance. Seneca wrote that it is not the man who has too little, but the one who craves more who is poor. Reflect on the essentials: food to nourish, shelter to protect, clothing to cover, friendship to comfort, reason to guide. Once these are secured, the rest is excess. This awareness does not forbid enjoyment of luxury, but prevents enslavement to it. You may enjoy a feast, but you do not need it to live well. This discipline also strengthens resilience. When you desire little, misfortune harms you less. Loss of wealth cannot crush you if your happiness does not depend on it. Loss of status cannot wound you if you never tied your worth to reputation. Even illness cannot rob you of peace if you have trained to see value in reason and virtue above all. By narrowing the scope of what you require for happiness, you reduce the power of fortune to disturb you. Desire, left unchecked, also corrodes relationships. People who demand constant affirmation, constant attention, constant proof of love suffocate those around them. But when you learn to want less, love becomes freer, lighter, purer. You give rather than grasp. You appreciate rather than demand. The discipline of desire makes space for genuine connection because you are no longer burdened by insatiable needs. Modern psychology echoes these truths. Studies show that materialism correlates with anxiety and dissatisfaction, while gratitude and simplicity correlate with greater well-being. The hedonic treadmill describes the constant pursuit of new pleasures that soon fade, leaving the person no happier than before. The Stoics anticipated this treadmill 2,000 years ago, offering the same solution. Step off by choosing contentment instead of endless craving. This discipline is not denial, but liberation. It does not forbid pleasure, but it places it in perspective. A Stoic can enjoy fine food, but they do not depend on it. They can admire beauty, but they are not enslaved by it. They can receive wealth, but they do not cling to it. Desire becomes a servant, not a master. This balance allows joy without attachment, pleasure without dependence, possession without loss of freedom. Practical training continues with reframing language. Instead of saying, "I need this," practice saying, "I would like this, but I can live without it." Words shape perception, and perception shapes desire. By reminding yourself of sufficiency, you weaken the urgency of wanting. This simple shift rewires craving into preference, reducing its power. Another powerful exercise is comparison downward rather than upward. Instead of envying those who have more, reflect on those who live with less. Seneca encouraged this, not to breed pride, but to breed gratitude. When you see that many survive with far fewer resources, you recognize your own abundance. This reverses the pull of desire, turning it into appreciation. The discipline of desire also frees the mind for higher pursuits. When energy is not consumed chasing possessions or recognition, it can be directed toward wisdom, service, and growth. The Stoics valued philosophy not as abstract thought, but as the practice of living well. By wanting less, you create space for what is greater. The pursuit of virtue replaces the pursuit of vanity, and the soul is nourished instead of starved. In daily practice, the discipline is tested constantly. Advertisements urge you to crave. Society measures you by wealth. Culture praises excess. To resist requires constant attention. But each act of resistance builds strength. Each time you choose gratitude over craving, sufficiency over hunger, simplicity over excess, you reinforce the habit. Over time, desire weakens and contentment becomes natural. The final lesson is that to master desire is to master freedom. A person who needs little cannot be controlled by bribery, cannot be broken by loss, cannot be enslaved by temptation. They live light, untouchable by fortune's swings, steady in themselves. This was the Stoic ideal, a life not of suppression but of sufficiency, not of endless hunger but of lasting peace. Thus, from the inner citadel, you guard your mind, and through the discipline of desire, you guard your heart. One keeps you safe from external blows, the other from internal hunger. Together, they create a freedom deeper than wealth, richer than power, more lasting than fame, the freedom of a soul content with what it has, unbroken by what it lacks. Learning to want less steadies the heart and frees the mind, but even with desire mastered, progress cannot be trusted to memory alone. Without deliberate reflection, lessons fade, mistakes repeat, and days blur into one another. The Stoics knew that growth requires not only action, but examination. They turned their evenings into classrooms, transforming the final moments of the day into opportunities for mastery. Seneca wrote that he questioned himself each night, reviewing what he had done, where he had faltered, and how he might improve tomorrow. This nightly discipline was not punishment, but training, a way to hold the soul accountable before sleep. Self-examination before sleep is powerful because it interrupts the human tendency to drift. Most people collapse into bed carrying distractions from the day, unfinished tasks, lingering resentment, idle entertainment. The day ends as thoughtlessly as it began. But for the Stoic, night is a sacred pause. It is the time to turn inward, to ask, did I live today according to my values? Did I act with courage? Did I speak with restraint? Did I use my time well? By asking these questions, the day does not vanish unmeasured. It becomes part of a living practice. This reflection sharpens awareness. Without it, you may fail repeatedly in the same ways without ever noticing. With it, patterns emerge. Perhaps you discover that anger rises most often in the morning, or that distraction steals your time in the evening. These insights guide adjustment. The point is not to dwell in regret, but to map the terrain of your character. Just as a general reviews battles to prepare for the next, the philosopher reviews the day to prepare for tomorrow. The practice also cultivates honesty. It is easy to justify mistakes in the moment, but in the quiet of evening, excuses lose strength. When you ask yourself plainly, "Did I act as I should?" you cannot lie without feeling the weight of it. This honesty builds integrity. You may still fall short, but you will not hide from yourself. That transparency is the soil where growth takes root. Another benefit is closure. Many carry the weight of the day into their sleep: anger, anxiety, unfinished conversations. Self-examination clears this weight. By reviewing actions, accepting responsibility, and setting intentions for tomorrow, you lay the day to rest. The mind enters sleep lighter, free from rumination. This not only improves rest, but also prepares the soul to wake ready. The exercise can be structured in simple steps. Begin by recalling the events of the day without judgment, simply observing. Then evaluate. Where did I act with virtue? Where did I falter? What could have been done better? Finally, resolve. How will I approach similar situations tomorrow? This simple rhythm, observe, evaluate, resolve, turns reflection into transformation. The Stoics paired this with gratitude. Even when the day was filled with hardship, they found reason to be thankful for endurance shown, for lessons learned, for the chance to try again tomorrow. Gratitude prevents reflection from sinking into self-criticism. It balances the sternness of examination with the warmth of appreciation. You recognize not only where you failed, but also where you grew, where you resisted temptation, where you acted with kindness. Modern psychology supports this practice. Journaling before bed has been shown to reduce stress, increase clarity, and improve sleep quality. Cognitive behavioral therapy often includes similar exercises, reviewing thoughts, identifying distortions, and planning healthier responses. The Stoics anticipated this centuries ago, proving again that wisdom is timeless. Self-examination also strengthens discipline. When you know you will face your own judgment at night, you act more carefully during the day. The thought of evening reflection becomes a silent companion, reminding you to hold your temper, to choose wisely, to stay true. In this way, the practice not only reviews the past, but also shapes the present. It also nurtures humility. Each night reveals that you are not yet perfect, that virtue is always in progress. But humility does not discourage. It motivates. To see yourself honestly is to see the distance yet to travel, and that vision pushes you forward. Progress is slow, but with daily reflection, it is steady. This ritual turns time itself into an ally. Days no longer slip by unnoticed. Each becomes a lesson, each evening a chance to learn, each tomorrow a chance to apply what was learned. Over weeks and years, this compounds into transformation. The self you build is shaped not by occasional resolutions, but by the steady rhythm of nightly examination. In practical terms, this can be done through writing or quiet thought. Some may prefer a journal, noting insights, struggles, and intentions. Others may prefer silent contemplation before sleep. The method matters less than the consistency. What matters is that each day ends not in distraction, but in reflection. The discipline also protects against arrogance. Success during the day can inflate pride, but nightly reflection tempers it. By reviewing actions, you see where ego intruded, where you acted for appearance rather than virtue. This humbling balance prevents self-deception, keeping progress genuine. At its core, self-examination before sleep is about ownership. You cannot control the past, but you can own your response to it. By reflecting each night, you refuse to let days pass unclaimed. You extract lessons, admit faults, strengthen gratitude, and set intention. In doing so, you turn ordinary evenings into moments of power, shaping character one night at a time. Thus, from mastering desire, you move naturally into mastering reflection. One steadies what you want, the other steadies how you live. Together they create balance, sufficiency in the present, accountability for the past, and preparation for the future. This is the Stoic way, not drifting, not delaying, but living each day fully examined, fully owned, and fully aligned with virtue. Reflection at the end of each day clears the mind, humbles the heart, and strengthens the will. But examination without joy risks becoming heavy. The Stoics never meant life to be endured only with stern discipline. They sought not just calm, but also a kind of joy so stable that it could not be stolen by loss, insult, or misfortune. This joy was not built on fleeting pleasures, on luxury, or on applause, but on the steady recognition that living with virtue is itself a reason to smile. The Stoic smile is the quiet confidence of one who needs little, fears little, and walks through life with a light spirit anchored in depth. The world often mistakes Stoicism for grim endurance, as if its followers only endure pain and deny delight. Yet the writings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus speak often of joy, not the wild happiness of indulgence, but the lasting contentment that comes from alignment with nature and reason. This is not a forced smile, nor a shallow optimism, but a serenity that radiates even in hardship. It is the joy of knowing that the good of the soul is untouched by external blows. This form of joy begins by rejecting dependence on excess. Most people tie happiness to possessions, recognition, or indulgence, and as a result, they live chained to conditions outside their control. When wealth grows, they smile. When it vanishes, they collapse. When praised, they are elated. When criticized, they despair. Stoic joy is immune to such fluctuations. It rests not on what fortune gives, but on what character maintains. A Stoic does not despise pleasures, but enjoys them without bondage. Luxury is pleasant, but not necessary. Recognition is welcome, but not essential. This detachment is what makes joy unbreakable. Cultivating this joy requires training the mind to see value in simplicity. Seneca noted that the person who delights in the simplest food and plain clothing is free because they are always satisfied. When the ordinary is enough, every addition feels like abundance. By contrast, those who depend on extravagance never feel complete, no matter how much they gain. The Stoic smile is born from gratitude for the essentials, turning water into sweetness, bread into feast, friendship into wealth. Joy without excess also requires alignment with purpose. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the proper work of a human is to live according to reason, justice, courage, and moderation. To fulfill this purpose is fulfilling in itself. When you act with integrity, when you speak truthfully, when you resist impulse, when you help another, you create joy that does not fade when fortune shifts. This joy is self-sustaining because it depends only on your choices, not on the whims of others. Practical exercises deepen this joy. One is to begin each day with gratitude for simply being alive, for the chance to breathe, think, and act. Another is to notice small beauties without needing to possess them: the sky, the sound of laughter, the strength of your own body. By savoring these, you train yourself to find delight in what cannot be bought or stolen. Over time, this becomes natural. Joy no longer requires conditions. It flows from perception. Stoic joy also comes from service, helping another, offering patience, giving kindness. These acts nourish a happiness deeper than self-indulgence. Epictetus reminded his students that human beings are made for cooperation, like feet walking together. To fulfill this role is to live in harmony with nature, and harmony brings joy. Unlike pleasure, which vanishes quickly, joy born of service remains, because it is tied to meaning, not appetite. Another source of joy is resilience itself. To endure hardship without collapse, to face insult without anger, to meet loss without despair. These victories create a satisfaction that indulgence cannot match. The Stoic smile often appears in moments others expect only sorrow, because the wise know that strength itself is a reason to rejoice. To discover that you can withstand more than you thought is one of life's deepest forms of happiness. Modern psychology echoes these insights. Research on well-being shows that lasting happiness is not linked to wealth or status, but to gratitude, purpose, relationships, and resilience, all central to Stoic teaching. Hedonic pleasures give short bursts of delight, but eudaimonic joy, rooted in meaning and virtue, endures. The Stoics anticipated this distinction, urging us to cultivate joy that does not collapse when pleasures fade. The Stoic smile is not blind to suffering. It does not deny grief or pretend that loss is painless. But it insists that even amid tears, the soul can rest in the knowledge that virtue is untouched. The body may weaken, fortune may turn, but the mind trained in wisdom still carries an inner light. That light is joy, not loud, but steady, not fragile, but resilient. Daily practice makes this joy stronger. In the morning, resolve to act with justice and patience. During the day, find beauty in the simple and meaning in service. At night, reflect on where you upheld virtue and where you can improve. Each cycle reinforces the sense that happiness is not something you chase, but something you live. The smile then becomes natural, a reflection of harmony between your actions and your principles. Joy without excess also prepares you for mortality. When you love what is simple, when you take delight in virtue rather than indulgence, you fear less the loss of external things. Even death itself loses part of its terror, because you have already learned that happiness is not dependent on fragile conditions. The Stoic smile endures even in the face of death, because it comes from a source deeper than life's fleeting gifts. From nightly reflection you gain self-mastery, and from joy without excess you gain lightness of spirit. One strengthens through accountability, the other softens through delight. Together, they make life both disciplined and beautiful, steady and radiant. The Stoic life is not grim endurance, but graceful resilience. Not denial of joy, but discovery of joy that cannot be broken. To carry such a smile is to carry freedom itself, calm, enduring, and untouchable. Joy without excess teaches that true happiness does not depend on abundance, but on alignment with virtue and appreciation of what is already present. Yet, there is an even higher form of appreciation that tests the very core of the human spirit. Gratitude not only for gifts and comforts, but also for what you never would have chosen. The Stoics taught that the deepest strength arises when you can give thanks not just for sunshine, but also for the storm, not just for victories, but also for defeats, not just for freedom, but also for constraints. Gratitude for the unchosen is the discipline of embracing life as a whole, finding value even in its harshest lessons. Ordinary gratitude flows easily when life is kind. People give thanks for health, for family, for success, for good fortune. But when illness strikes, when relationships fracture, when opportunities vanish, gratitude often disappears. This is precisely where Stoic practice begins. For Marcus Aurelius, every obstacle was raw material for virtue. For Seneca, misfortune was an opportunity for endurance. For Epictetus, even slavery was a teacher, shaping resilience that no freedom could have offered. Gratitude for the unchosen is therefore not naive optimism. It is an act of strength, the deliberate decision to see every event as part of your training. To practice this, begin by reframing obstacles. When something blocks your path, instead of cursing it, ask, what quality is this demanding from me? Patience, courage, creativity, endurance? Marcus wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way. Gratitude arises when you see that the challenge is not robbing you of progress, but shaping it. A delay teaches patience, a failure teaches humility, a loss teaches love. The obstacle itself becomes the gift if you are willing to learn. Loss, too, invites this discipline. To lose someone you love is agony, and gratitude may feel impossible. But the Stoics urged remembering that every bond was always temporary, every life always fragile. Gratitude for the unchosen does not deny grief, but it honors the time that was given instead of resenting its end. You say not only, "Why was this taken?" but also, "How fortunate I was to have had it at all." This shift does not erase pain, but it anchors grief in love rather than bitterness. Limitations are another unchosen teacher. Many rage against their physical, financial, or social limits, believing life would be better if only circumstances were different. Yet Epictetus, born a slave and crippled, taught freedom of the mind more powerfully than those with every external advantage. Gratitude for limitations is the recognition that boundaries create focus, that scarcity sharpens appreciation, that weakness trains strength. When you stop resenting what you cannot change, you begin to see how it has shaped your character. Gratitude transforms the cage into a classroom. Even failures deserve thanks. A failed plan forces redirection, often toward paths you would not have considered otherwise. Gratitude here means recognizing that what felt like ruin often becomes foundation. Many people later admit that their greatest growth came from their lowest points, that what seemed like destruction was actually reconstruction. The Stoic does not wait for hindsight. They give thanks even in the midst of failure, trusting that it is part of their shaping. Daily practice builds this habit. One exercise is to end each evening not only noting what went well, but also giving thanks for what did not. Did someone insult you? Give thanks for the chance to practice patience. Did you face a setback at work? Give thanks for the reminder that results are never guaranteed. Did your body ache? Give thanks for the lesson in impermanence and the opportunity to cherish health more deeply. This is not forced cheerfulness, but deliberate reframing, turning every difficulty into a teacher. Gratitude for the unchosen also dissolves resentment. Many people carry anger for years about injustices, betrayals, or disappointments. Yet holding resentment is like drinking poison daily. Gratitude shifts the story. Instead of seeing only harm, you search for what strength or clarity arose from the experience. Perhaps betrayal taught you discernment. Perhaps failure taught you humility. Perhaps injustice awakened your courage. By thanking life for even these, you reclaim power over your narrative. You are no longer the victim of events, but the student of them. This practice also breeds humility. To thank life for blessings is natural, but to thank it for trials requires recognition that you do not see the whole design. What feels like punishment may later reveal itself as preparation. Gratitude for the unchosen is an act of trust. Trust that life is wiser than your limited view. Trust that even in hardship, there is value waiting to be uncovered. Humility allows you to bow to reality instead of fighting it, to say yes even when you would rather say no. Modern psychology aligns with this wisdom. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who find meaning in hardship often emerge stronger, more compassionate, and more resilient. Gratitude practices, even for difficulties, reduce stress and increase well-being. The Stoics anticipated this long ago. The mind that turns every event into material for growth cannot be defeated. Gratitude for the unchosen is not denial. It is transformation. Another dimension is compassion. When you give thanks for your own trials, you become more understanding of the trials of others. You know from experience that suffering shapes, that loss teaches, that hardship deepens. Gratitude softens judgment, replacing it with empathy. You no longer envy those with easier paths because you see that your struggles have given you depth they may not yet have. Gratitude here is not only personal but relational. It binds you to humanity in shared endurance. The practice extends even to mortality. Gratitude for death itself may seem impossible, yet Marcus reminded himself often that death is natural, part of the same cycle that brought him into being. To thank life for mortality is to thank it for urgency, for focus, for the preciousness of each hour. Immortality would breed complacency. Finitude breeds depth. The awareness that time is limited is itself a gift, sharpening priorities and fueling meaning. This discipline is demanding, but it transforms the soul. Where others see only misfortune, you see material for growth. Where others curse fate, you bless it. Where others cling to resentment, you release it through gratitude. In this way, nothing in life is wasted. Not pain, not loss, not failure, not limitation. Everything becomes part of your shaping. Everything becomes worthy of thanks. And so the Stoic smile deepens into something unshakable. You do not smile only when fortune is kind. You smile even when fortune is harsh, because you have trained yourself to love not only the chosen, but also the unchosen. This is the highest form of freedom, to live without bitterness, to find value in everything, to carry gratitude not only for blessings, but also for burdens. Such a life cannot be broken, because it is built on a gratitude that nothing can take away. Gratitude for the unchosen teaches you to accept every circumstance as part of your shaping, but this practice raises an even larger question. If all things are given by life, then how should life itself be lived? For the Stoics, the answer was simple in words, but profound in practice. Live according to nature. This phrase is often misunderstood, reduced to rustic simplicity or withdrawal from society. Yet for Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, living by nature was not about abandoning the world, but about aligning with its order, its reason, and its truth. To live by nature is to live as a human being ought to live, rationally, justly, courageously, and in harmony with the whole. In the modern world, this principle can feel distant. Cities rise higher than forests, technology surrounds every moment, and artificial comforts fill daily life. Yet the Stoic teaching remains urgent. Nature is not only the trees and rivers, it is also human nature, the capacity for reason, for cooperation, for discipline, for virtue. To live by nature today means to live in alignment with what you are designed to be, even amidst concrete, machines, and digital noise. One aspect is recognizing that nature is change. The universe is in constant flux. Stars collapse, rivers shift, bodies age, fortunes alter. To resist change is to resist the very fabric of reality. Living by nature means embracing change as essential, not as disruption, but as the way of things. Marcus reminded himself that nothing is permanent, and to fight impermanence is to exhaust yourself against inevitability. In modern life, where technology promises control and permanence, the reminder that everything flows is essential. Gratitude for change is part of living naturally. Another element is simplicity. Nature provides what is necessary: food, shelter, rest, community. But modern life multiplies wants into endless complexity. To live by nature is to distinguish needs from cravings, to honor sufficiency rather than excess. This does not mean rejecting technology or comfort, but using them wisely, without letting them master you. A meal of bread and water can sustain you as surely as a banquet, and knowing this is freedom. When you understand what is truly necessary, you cannot be enslaved by artificial needs. Living according to nature also means honoring the body. The body is not a machine to be neglected or idolized, but part of the natural order entrusted to you. Exercise, rest, and nourishment align you with your physical nature. In modern life, with its sedentary habits and processed foods, this requires conscious practice. To walk, to breathe fresh air, to eat with moderation, to sleep in rhythm with your needs. These simple acts reconnect you with the design of your being. Gratitude for the body even with its limitations, is gratitude for nature's gift. But the Stoics emphasize that the higher part of human nature is reason. Animals follow instinct, but humans are capable of reflection, judgment, and choice. To live by nature is to live guided by reason rather than impulse. Technology today thrives on exploiting impulses, endless scrolling, addictive entertainment, compulsive consumption. To resist this trap is to live more naturally than those enslaved by it. Reason allows you to pause, to question, to choose what is good rather than what is merely pleasant. Justice is also part of human nature. Epictetus said that people are made for each other, like hands or feet. To live by nature is to act with fairness, compassion, and cooperation. Cities may be crowded and anonymous, but every interaction is still a chance to live justly, treating colleagues with respect, strangers with kindness, family with patience. Technology may connect billions, but without justice and empathy, connection is hollow. Living according to nature means remembering that humanity itself is a community, and your role within it is to contribute, not to exploit. Living by nature also involves harmony with the wider world. Even in a city, you are part of the earth. Wastefulness, exploitation, and neglect of the environment are betrayals of nature. The Stoics, though not environmentalists in the modern sense, saw the universe as one living whole. To live against the earth is to live against yourself, for you are part of it. Simple practices, moderation in consumption, respect for resources, time spent in natural settings, align you again with this truth. A deeper layer is acceptance of mortality. Nature gave you life, and nature will take it. To live by nature is to accept death as part of the cycle, not as an intrusion. Fear of death comes from the illusion that life belongs to you, but the Stoics remind you that life is a loan, not a possession. When you accept this, every day becomes a gift, every action a chance to honor the time you are given. Death is not outside of nature, it is its completion. Practical exercises help bring this into the modern world. Begin with mindful presence in ordinary activities, eating slowly, walking without distraction, observing the sky, listening to the rhythm of your breath. Each act reconnects you with natural rhythm. Practice restraint in consumption, pause before buying, ask whether it is necessary, remind yourself of sufficiency. Reflect daily on your role in the community. Did you act justly? Did you help? Did you harm? Use technology intentionally, as a tool, not as a master. Each choice, however small, is a step toward living by nature. Living by nature does not mean abandoning progress. The Stoics were not against civilization. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. It means using progress without forgetting essence. You can drive a car, but do not let speed rob you of patience. You can use a phone, but do not let it consume your presence. You can enjoy comfort, but do not forget how little is required for sufficiency. To live by nature in modern life is to balance progress with principle, technology with reason, abundance with moderation. The reward of this alignment is peace. When you live against nature, you are always in conflict, desiring more than is necessary, fearing change that is inevitable, resenting death that is certain. When you live according to nature, you release this struggle. You walk in harmony with reality, no longer demanding that the world bend to your will, but choosing to align your will with the world. This is freedom, not the freedom to do anything, but the freedom to live rightly, steadily, in accordance with what is true. And so gratitude for the unchosen flows naturally into the practice of living by nature. You thank life not only for blessings, but also for burdens, because both are natural. You align with reason, justice, simplicity, and acceptance, because that is your nature. In a world of cities, machines, and artificial distractions, the Stoic call remains the same. Live according to nature, and you will live free. Living in alignment with nature reveals that much of human suffering comes from resisting what is, from craving what is unnecessary, and from fearing what is inevitable. Yet even when you begin to harmonize with the flow of life, another obstacle rises within the heart, the sting of envy. You may practice gratitude, you may train moderation, you may cultivate reason, but when you see others succeed where you have not, the pull of jealousy can still poison your peace. The Stoics did not deny this impulse. They recognized it as part of human weakness, but they also knew that envy can be transformed, not suppressed. By reframing jealousy as admiration, you redirect its energy away from bitterness and toward growth. Envy begins in comparison. You look at someone else's achievements, possessions, or recognition and measure yourself against them. Instead of inspiration, the result is resentment. The Stoics saw this as irrational because another's fortune takes nothing from you. The fact that someone else prospers does not diminish your capacity for virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that another's excellence should be a model, not a threat. To envy is to waste energy in complaint. To admire is to use that energy for improvement. This reframing begins with awareness. When jealousy stirs, pause and name it. Instead of being carried along by bitterness, ask yourself, what is it in this person that I admire beneath my envy? Is it their discipline, their courage, their creativity, their patience? By identifying the underlying quality, you turn resentment into recognition. You see not the enemy, but the teacher, someone whose example reveals what is possible. Envy is destructive only when left unexamined. When transformed, it becomes a map pointing you toward growth. The practice also requires humility. Envy grows strongest when pride resists admitting that others may surpass you in certain areas. But humility allows you to see others' strengths without shame. Just as no tree resents another for growing taller, no wise person resents another for excelling. Each has its role, its conditions, its gifts. Gratitude for your own nature frees you to admire the achievements of others without envy. Instead of thinking, "Why not me?" you think, "How can I learn from them?" In daily life, this reframing can be applied constantly. At work, when a colleague is praised, the jealous mind says, "They do not deserve it." The Stoic mind says, "What quality brought them this recognition, and how can I cultivate it too?" In friendships, when someone advances while you struggle, the jealous mind says, "Life is unfair." The Stoic mind says, "Their path is theirs, my path is mine. May I use their success as a mirror for my own discipline." On social media, when endless images of wealth or beauty provoke comparison, the Stoic response is to remember that appearances are not substance, and that true wealth lies in sufficiency, true beauty in character. Another exercise is to examine the cost of what you envy. Seneca advised considering not only what someone possesses, but also what price they paid to achieve it. Do you envy their wealth? Reflect on the years of labor, the risks, the sacrifices. Do you envy their status? Reflect on the responsibilities, the scrutiny, the lack of privacy. Often, envy withers when you see the burden behind the appearance. Admiration then shifts toward the qualities of endurance and effort rather than the superficial outcome. The Stoics also emphasized focusing on what is within your control. Envy directs your gaze outward, obsessing over what others have. Admiration redirects it inward, asking what you can do. You cannot control another's fortune, but you can control your effort, your discipline, your choices. This shift restores agency. Instead of being weakened by comparison, you are strengthened by direction. Jealousy also blinds you to abundance. It narrows focus onto what you lack rather than what you have. Admiration widens perspective, reminding you that you, too, have strengths others may value. Perhaps you are not wealthy, but you are patient. Perhaps you are not famous, but you are loyal. Perhaps you do not have recognition, but you have resilience. The Stoic practice is not to deny differences, but to honor your own gifts while respecting those of others. Each person carries their portion of excellence, and the wise celebrate all without resentment. Turning envy into admiration also fosters community. Envy divides, creating distance and hostility. Admiration unites, creating respect and cooperation. When you celebrate others' success, you strengthen bonds rather than weaken them. The Stoics believed humans are made for cooperation, like hands working together. By admiring rather than envying, you align with this natural order, contributing to harmony rather than discord. Modern psychology confirms this transformation. Studies show that envy corrodes well-being, increasing stress and dissatisfaction, while admiration and gratitude improve resilience and motivation. Social comparison is inevitable, but its effect depends on interpretation. When you see others' success as threat, you suffer. When you see it as example, you grow. The Stoics anticipated this. Envy is a misuse of attention, admiration its correction. Practical training begins with small acts. When envy rises, consciously name one quality in the person worth admiring. Write it down if necessary. Then ask, how can I practice this quality tomorrow? Over time, this habit rewires jealousy into inspiration. Each instance of envy becomes an opportunity for self-improvement rather than self-destruction. This practice also deepens joy. When you admire others, you share in their success. Instead of one person rejoicing, two rejoice. When you envy, both suffer, one with resentment, the other often unaware. By admiring, you expand your capacity for happiness, finding delight not only in your progress, but in the progress of others. The Stoic smile becomes wider, not confined to your victories, but open to the victories of all. At its deepest level, turning envy into admiration is about aligning with reason. Reason tells you that another's excellence does not diminish your worth. Reason tells you that life is not a competition for limited virtue, but a field where all can grow. Reason tells you that admiration fuels improvement while envy drains it. To choose admiration is to choose wisdom, to transform a vice into a virtue, to turn poison into medicine. From living by nature, you learn harmony with the whole. From turning envy into admiration, you learn harmony with others within that whole. One aligns you with the order of the universe, the other with the excellence of your fellow beings. Together they cultivate a life free from bitterness, rich in inspiration, and guided by a spirit that welcomes every example of virtue as fuel for its own flame. When envy is turned into admiration, the heart becomes lighter and relationships become stronger. You stop seeing others as rivals and begin to see them as teachers, which clears the path for harmony and growth. But even as the mind learns to free itself from jealousy, another test remains constant: the words you choose. If envy poisons silently, words poison aloud. They can fracture trust, wound deeply, and undo years of virtue in a single moment. The Stoics knew that speech carries weight heavier than many realize. To speak without restraint is to surrender reason to impulse. To master words is to master one of the most powerful forces available to human beings. Speech reveals character. Actions matter, but words often expose what is hidden in the heart. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to speak more than necessary, because the tongue often outruns thought. Seneca wrote that careless speech betrays careless living. What you say and how you say it reflects your discipline or lack of it. Words filled with malice show a mind enslaved by anger. Words of vanity reveal a soul craving recognition. Words of calm and clarity demonstrate mastery. The Stoics considered restraint in speech a form of strength. Many think power is loudness, but often the strongest voice is the one that knows when to be silent. Epictetus taught that nature gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth so that you might listen more than you speak. To restrain speech is not weakness, but sovereignty over impulse. In restraint, you give reason time to guide you. In restraint, you prevent harm before it is done. Words also shape the world around you. They can soothe conflict or inflame it. A harsh word spoken in anger can scar a relationship for years. A word of encouragement can lift a soul from despair. The Stoics understood that words are not empty sounds. They are actions in themselves. To treat them lightly is to treat people lightly. To weigh them carefully is to honor both yourself and others. In modern life, words travel further than ever before. A careless remark posted online can reach thousands, even millions, shaping reputations and stirring storms. The Stoic discipline of speech is even more urgent now. Before speaking or typing, you must ask, is this true? Is this just? Is this necessary? If not, silence is the better choice. Once words leave you, they cannot be recalled. They become part of the world's memory, part of your legacy. Speech also trains the self. Words spoken repeatedly shape thought. If you constantly complain, your mind becomes attuned to negativity. If you constantly criticize, your vision narrows to faults. If you speak with gratitude, your mind learns to notice blessings. Language is not only a reflection of thought, but also a sculptor of it. The discipline of words is therefore the discipline of thought itself. Another aspect is the alignment of word and deed. The Stoics despised hypocrisy, the gap between what is said and what is done. Words without corresponding action reveal weakness. When your speech and your conduct match, you build trust within yourself and with others. To live so that your words are unnecessary because your life speaks for itself, that was the Stoic ideal. Practical exercises help cultivate this discipline. One is to pause before speaking, even briefly, to allow reason to weigh impulse. Another is to practice silence intentionally, spending periods of time without speaking to sharpen listening and reflection. Seneca advised testing whether words improve upon silence. If they do not, silence is the stronger choice. Another practice is careful choice of tone. Words spoken with harshness often wound more than their content demands. To train yourself to speak with calm, even in conflict, is to wield strength. The Stoic is not cold, but measured, firm when needed, gentle when possible, always deliberate. Restraint does not mean muteness. Stoicism does not forbid speech, it refines it. The wise speak truth, but they do so at the right time, with the right measure, for the right purpose. To remain silent in the face of injustice is cowardice. To speak truth with clarity and calm is courage. The weight of words requires discernment, when to hold them back, when to let them fall. Words also carry the power of self-reminder. Marcus Aurelius wrote not to impress others, but to instruct himself. His meditations are words spoken inward, shaping his own character. In the same way, the words you choose to repeat to yourself, affirmations, reflections, questions, become guides. They form the architecture of your inner citadel. To feed yourself with careless or bitter words is to weaken it. To feed yourself with measured, disciplined words is to strengthen it. The danger of empty words is great. Talking endlessly about virtue without practicing it weakens character. Epictetus warned his students not to become philosophers of words only, but philosophers of deeds. Words must serve as tools, not decorations. They must direct life, not substitute for it. The discipline of speech also trains humility. Speaking less forces you to listen more. Listening reveals that others too carry wisdom and experience. By restraining your own tongue, you create space for understanding. This humility builds stronger bonds and deepens knowledge. In families, careful speech preserves love. Words spoken in anger between parent and child, between partners, between siblings, can echo for years. Restraint and gentleness prevent wounds that apologies cannot always heal. In workplaces, measured speech builds trust and leadership. Leaders who speak with clarity and calm guide more effectively than those who shout. Among friends, honesty spoken kindly strengthens loyalty. Modern research supports the Stoic view. Communication studies show that tone, word choice, and restraint often determine whether conflicts escalate or resolve. Neurology shows that language patterns reinforce emotional states. To discipline speech is therefore to discipline relationships, communities, and even society itself. The weight of words lies not only in their effect on others, but in the imprint they leave on your own soul. Every careless insult darkens the speaker before it wounds the target. Every word of truth and encouragement strengthens both giver and receiver. To take speech seriously is to take character seriously. And so from turning envy into admiration, which teaches how to see others rightly, we move into the discipline of words, which teaches how to speak to others rightly. One transforms thought, the other transforms communication. Together they form a path to harmony. Admiration dissolves bitterness. Measured words preserve peace. This is the Stoic way, not silence without reason, not speech without restraint, but words chosen with care, weighted with truth, guided by virtue. Speech, once disciplined, guards harmony, but even the wisest words cannot guarantee peace in human bonds. Families quarrel, friendships strain, and love falters not always because of what is spoken, but because of expectations that were never within our control to begin with. Here lies one of the deepest tests of Stoic wisdom: relationships. For it is in love, in friendship, and in family that we often surrender calm most quickly, demanding from others what they may never be able to give. The paradox is clear. When you try to control others, you lose peace. When you release control, bonds often grow stronger. The dichotomy of control, applied to relationships, becomes a compass for how to live with others without losing yourself. The first step is recognition. You do not control the thoughts, feelings, or actions of another person. You may influence, you may guide, you may inspire, but their choices remain theirs. Much suffering comes from forgetting this truth. Parents agonize over the paths their children take. Lovers despair when affection fades. Friends feel betrayed when loyalty is not returned. The Stoics would say the pain is sharpened not by the event itself, but by the demand that it be otherwise. To demand that another's mind bend to your will is to fight the nature of human freedom. Yet the paradox reveals itself. Releasing control does not weaken bonds, it strengthens them. When you accept that others are free, you stop clinging with desperation. Love becomes lighter, friendship becomes freer, family becomes less suffocating. Instead of trying to possess, you learn to accompany. This shift transforms relationships from chains into choices. The Stoics taught that real affection cannot be forced, only offered. Control suffocates, freedom nurtures. In love, this means recognizing that you cannot guarantee another's feelings. Many cling tightly, fearing loss, trying to secure permanence through demand. But love cannot be demanded, it must be given freely. Epictetus warned against tying happiness to what is not yours. Another's heart is not yours. What is yours is the choice to love well, to act with honesty, to remain faithful to your values. When you focus on what belongs to you, you find peace regardless of outcome. Paradoxically, this makes love stronger because it is no longer weighed down by fear. In friendship, the dichotomy of control reminds you that you cannot force loyalty. Friends may drift, misunderstand, or even betray. This does not erase your ability to remain loyal, to forgive, to continue practicing kindness. What you control is your side of the bond, not theirs. By focusing on your role, you preserve dignity even if the relationship changes. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that others act according to their understanding, not always with malice. To interpret disappointment through this lens turns bitterness into compassion. Family provides perhaps the greatest challenge. Parents often seek to shape children entirely, forgetting that children are independent souls. Siblings clash over differences, each demanding that the other behave as expected. Spouses expect perfection, creating frustration when flaws appear. The Stoic answer is to release the illusion of ownership. Children are given to you for guidance, not possession. Siblings are companions, not copies. Partners are fellow travelers, not extensions of your will. To love them according to nature is to love their freedom as much as your own. Releasing control does not mean indifference. It means investing where your influence lies, in your example. You cannot control whether a child listens, but you can control whether you live in a way worth imitating. You cannot control whether a partner changes, but you can control whether you speak with truth and patience. You cannot control whether a friend betrays you, but you can control whether you respond with bitterness or with composure. Influence born of example is stronger than control born of demand. The paradox deepens when you see that freedom builds closeness. When you stop clinging, people feel less pressured and more willing to stay. When you stop demanding, people feel less judged and more accepted. What you feared losing by releasing control often becomes more secure because it is freely given. The Stoic who understands this walks lighter, unafraid of loss, and therefore more capable of love. Practical exercises make this principle real. Begin by identifying what belongs to you in any relationship. your thoughts, your actions, your words, your choices. Then identify what does not belong to you, another's feelings, decisions, perceptions. Each time conflict arises, separate the two. Act only on what is yours, release the rest. Another practice is nightly reflection. Ask not whether others treated you as you wished, but whether you acted as you should. This shifts the measure of success from external response to internal alignment. Another method is to prepare the mind for disappointment. Each morning, remind yourself, today my loved ones may act impatiently, my friends may neglect me, my colleagues may misunderstand me. If these come, they will not surprise me, for they are part of human nature. This expectation softens the blow, making patience easier. When disappointment arrives, gratitude remains, because you foresaw it and chose to remain steady. Even gratitude itself is transformed through this practice. You stop taking relationships for granted because you recognize their fragility. Every moment with loved ones becomes more precious when you release the demand that they will always be there. Gratitude replaces entitlement. You no longer say, they must stay. You say, I am grateful they are here now. This shift deepens affection and reduces resentment. The dichotomy of control in relationships also protects against manipulation. When you know that your peace does not depend on another's approval, you cannot be coerced. Many suffer because they fear rejection, bending their values to please. The Stoic, by focusing only on what is theirs, cannot be enslaved by such fear. They remain free to act rightly, even if it displeases others. This integrity strengthens relationships in the long term because it builds trust and authenticity. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Studies on attachment show that relationships thrive not through control, but through security and autonomy. Couples with healthy independence report greater satisfaction. Parents who guide without controlling foster resilience in children. Friendships built on mutual respect endure longer than those bound by demand. The Stoic paradox that letting go brings closeness finds support in modern science. At its core, the practice teaches you to love without possession, to care without clinging, to guide without domination. It transforms relationships from sources of anxiety into opportunities for virtue. When you focus on what is yours, you remain steady regardless of outcome. You love more freely because you are not enslaved by fear of loss. You forgive more quickly because you do not demand perfection. You endure more patiently because you accept human fallibility. Thus, from the weight of words you learn restraint in speech, and through the paradox of control you learn restraint in expectation. One protects harmony by guiding how you speak. The other protects harmony by guiding how you love. Together, they form a foundation for relationships that are lighter, freer, and stronger. Bonds not of possession, but of respect, resilience, and virtue. 3 hours have passed, and together we've walked through the full arc of Stoic wisdom. Voluntary discomfort to train the will, negative visualization to strip away fear, the dichotomy of control to anchor freedom in a chaotic age, silence as strength, pain as a teacher, time as wealth, indifference as power, role models as guides, cosmic perspective to humble the ego, anger as madness to be restrained, death as motivation, Amor fati to embrace all outcomes, the inner citadel to guard your peace, the discipline of desire to free the heart, nightly self-examination for mastery, joy without excess to sustain the spirit, gratitude for even the unchosen, living by nature in the modern world, turning envy into admiration, the weight of words to honor truth, the paradox of control in relationships, and every practice that together forms a way of life. Calm, resilient, unshakable. If you have stayed until the end, you now carry tools to face life with clarity and courage. Stoicism is not theory. It is practice. Its value begins only when you live it. So tonight, as you close your eyes, ask yourself one question. Which of these lessons will I put into action tomorrow? Because philosophy only matters when it becomes flesh in your choices. Now, I want to hear from you. Share in the comments. Which meditation spoke to you the most, and which one will you start practicing first? Your words may inspire someone else who needed to hear exactly that. And if you found strength in this journey, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next step on this path of wisdom. Together, we will keep building minds that remain calm in chaos, steady in storms, and free in every moment of life.